Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Was Torn by Wind and Pressure? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Chapter 1. Deku vs. Tanjiro. Deku was walking to school one day when he saw a big portal open up. He was too far from his dorm to tell anyone, and his only chance would be yelling. The person that came out of the portal had a sword and a checkered jacket. At least this stranger has style, Deku thought. The person shook the sword forward and Deku kicked it into the air. The sword landed in Deku's hand, pointed at the stranger. The stranger came through the portal all the way and punched Deku in the face. The stranger was sent flying by the pressure of the punch, and he flew through walls, traffic cones, and people. He finally landed on his face in a pile of more traffic cones. A car was speeding at the stranger, and the stranger knew he couldn't survive if the car hit him. Not only that, but the car was too fast and it was too late to move. The stranger was preparing to die when a green beam shot into the air. The green beam was a person, and it saved the stranger right before he got hit by the car. "Hi, I'm Izuku," Deku said to the stranger. The stranger still didn't trust him. The stranger kicked Deku in the face. Deku wasn't about resorting to violence, so he kept trying to explain himself to the stranger. No matter how much he tried, the stranger wouldn't listen and kept trying to attack. The stranger pulled his sword back, and Deku finally realized that the stranger wouldn't listen. Deku kicked the stranger in the stomach, and the stranger was sent flying into a tree. A mad look was now on Deku's face. He launched himself at the stranger. Full cowling. Comment. Chapter 2. Deku vs. Tanjiro 2. Deku put his hand out in his flicking position. "Smash!" Deku yelled. He flicked with his finger and the pressure from the flick sent the stranger flying. The stranger landed on the floor. Deku started walking up to him angrily. "What's your problem, you short mess?" Deku said to the boy. "Okay, I'm sorry for all the attacking," the boy said. "My name is Tanjiro, and in my world, it's pretty hard to trust people when they are demons everywhere." Suddenly, a creature with big eyes slipped out of the portal. Tanjiro instantly recognized the creature as a demon. Tanjiro picked up his sword steadily. The two boys knew what to do. Deku kicked the monster to Tanjiro, Tanjiro punched the monster in the gut, and then Deku flicked it to Tanjiro. If the monster was immobile and flying through the air, then that gave Tanjiro a chance to attack. Tanjiro pulled his sword back. Deku had to get to class soon, they were having the season hero test. Tanjiro sliced the monster into 1,000,000 pieces. Swoop. After all of this had happened, Tanjiro was already ready to go home. As he was about to walk through the portal, he looked back and waved at Deku. Tanjiro knew he would come back eventually. He and his sister could live a better life here. The portal closed and Tanjiro left. A tear showed up in Deku's eye. Deku remembered the test, and he started running to the building. He was almost there when... Comment. Chapter 3. The Seasonal Hero Test. Deku ran into the room and noticed that nobody was there. He turned around and ran out of the building. He noticed the large battlefield-looking area. That must have shown up recently, Deku thought. Deku was sure it wasn't there a week ago. Deku walked into the battlefield area and he noticed his class and his teacher in a weird gate place. "Hey there, young Midoriya," All Might said. All Might was the teacher for the SHT. A new student showed up that day. His name was Toriko Hashiko. He also had a friend, who was also a new student. His name was Kaito Yamato. "Nice to meet you," Deku said to the two boys. The two boys replied with the same thing and the exam started. Deku stretched his legs and then his arms. This time, he wouldn't let Bakugo again. "In this test, you students with fight all over the battlefield until one person is left," All Might explained. "Fighting won't help you win though," All Might then said. "To win, you must get someone off of their feet," All Might then said. It was a weird idea, but it was a clever way to pass the exam. Anyone swept off of their feet would be out. If the time runs out and you're still standing, you pass. Cameras had been set up everywhere to make sure nobody cheated. Everyone left to go change into their hero outfits. Hatsum had been working on a new outfit for Deku and it had recently been finished. The gloves were upgraded, the mask and hoodie were increased in size, and the shoes were advanced with foot bracelets, guards, and a new blue and black color. Guards and bracelets surrounded Deku's gloves and his gloves had also been colored blue. The outfit had been upgraded, black marks and lines were marking the outfit and the outfit came in a lighter green color. Deku knew this would give him an advantage, but then he saw all the others' outfits. They had gotten their outfits upgraded too. Deku knew that it wouldn't be fair if he had all the advantages, so he didn't mind all the upgrades. Most of them were new colors, guards, bracelets, and other upgrades. But Deku had a few more special things that came with his new costume. His shoes had air pockets to make his kicks stronger and he had his new gloves made out of stronger material so they would last longer. These two upgrades were most important and he was ready to fight and win against his rival, Kaken. I already know I'll win this challenge, Bakugo yelled. No you won't, Deku replied. I'll beat you this year, in fact we all will, Deku then yelled. Everyone knew they had a chance. Yeah, Kirishima yelled. We got this, Mina yelled. We can do it, Shiro yelled. We will win, Uraraka yelled. Shut up you Diamond nerds, Bakugo yelled. Even if you team up on me, I have the power of 10 All Mights to kick your miserable asses. Bakugo was getting angry. Everyone had the power within them, they just had to believe. The exam was about to start. 3.2.1. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 4, The Outers and Inners. Oh! All Might yelled. Everyone ran in different directions, ready to attack. Suddenly, Rikido got stuck on something. It was one of Mineta's sticky ball. Mineta was behind a rock, smirking. Rikido started to fall over and he landed on his face. Rikido was out of the test. Anyone who failed the test would have to take some mini-exams and do some extracurricular work. Rikido walked out of the battlefield and the battle continued. Mineta kept throwing his sticky ball and many were forced to find a way to stop him. Tura decided to sneak up on Mineta with her invisible quirk. Mineta didn't see her coming and she kicked him in the back. Mineta landed on the floor. Damn it! Mineta yelled. Mineta is out of the challenge. Deku turned around to see Bakugo sneaking up behind him and Bakugo kicked him in the back. Deku quickly started running. Full cowl, he yelled as he ran. This was the time for one of his new moves. Each of his smash attacks did something different to the area around him to give him an advantage, whether it's making a tornado or just large rocks flying everywhere. Illinois smash, Deku yelled as he punched Bakugo in the stomach. Bakugo was sent onto the floor but he wasn't off his feet. He was holding up by a push-up. Deku decided to focus on others. Todoroki used his ice powers to freeze Shiro in place. He wasn't out because he wasn't off of his feet though. Todoroki finished the job with a swift kick to the face and Shiro was off of his feet and out of the challenge. Denki ran up to Koda and jump kicked him. Except he missed and Koda started to run somewhere else. Denki was about to hit the floor when Shoji sealed the deal by kicking him in the face. Denki was out of the challenge. But this was just the start. 17 minutes of the challenge were still left to get everyone out. Now the real game starts. 0 comment. Chapter 5, The Semifinals. Deku kicked Bakugo in the arm but he stayed up. So far, Rikido, Mineta, Denki, and Shiro are out. Bakugo punched Shoji in the face and he was knocked away. Shoji was now out. Mina was running all over the place and then she bumped into Koda. Mina survived but Koda fell over and was now out of the challenge. 12 minutes remained in the challenge. Bakugo ran over to Uraraka, ready to use his explosions. Suddenly, Deku ran over and kicked Bakugo back. Uraraka ran away as the fight happened behind her. Tenya punched Kirishima, but Kirishima used his defense quirk, Harden, to block Tenya's attack. Tenya ran around the battlefield left and right with his jet leg quirk. Tenya jumped at top speed and positioned in for a swift quick kick attack. His feet were aimed forward, ready to strike someone. He hit Aoyama in the stomach and Aoyama shot one last beam that took Jairu out. Aoyama and Jairu were now out. The remaining contestants were Deku, Bakugo, Uraraka, Ojiro, Momo, Todoroki, Mina, Tsuyu, Kirishima, and Tokoyami. Now there was 7 minutes left on the clock. It was time. Zero comment. Chapter 6, The Last Battles. Tokoyami used his dark shadow to knock Ojiro over. Ojiro was now out of the challenge. Tokoyami hit Todoroki, but Todoroki used his ice to block his fall. Uraraka made Tenya float into the air, and after a while of letting him float, she put her hands together to make him fall. Tenya was about to lose the challenge with 5 minutes left on the clock. Deku saved Tenya from landing off of his feet. He would rather save everyone and let everyone pass than let a low amount of people pass. Tokoyami kicked Bakugo in the back, then Bakugo turned around to see nobody there. Deku was all about letting everyone have a chance to pass, but in his mind, Bakugo didn't deserve it. Bakugo won every challenge this class had, but this time, Deku wouldn't let it happen. Deku grabbed Bakugo by the arm and threw him into the air. Tokoyami used his dark shadow to punch Bakugo over and over. Tenya used his speed and jumping to hit Bakugo back and forth, and when Bakugo was about to land on his feet, Uraraka would touch him to make him float. Deku decided to finish it off with his famous new move. Shoot style, Deku shouted as he jumped towards Bakugo. Type 2. Detroit Smash. Deku kicked back in the stomach and he was sent flying. The pressure from the kick also sent Deku flying. That meant Deku might fail. It was a worthy sacrifice with a worthy purpose. Deku was about to hit the floor, but someone's hand touched him at the last second. It was Uraraka coming to save the day. Deku floated in the air and Bakugo hit the floor, making one last explosion before he was out for good. It happened. Bakugo lost. He was out of the challenge. 23 seconds were left on the clock and Bakugo left the arena, swearing like crazy. Deku was about to hit the floor with 5 seconds left. But it was too late. The time was up and Deku passed. In fact, Momo, Uraraka, Tokoyami, Todoroki, Mina, Tenya, Tsuyu, and Kirishima all passed the test. Everyone was excited and everyone was cheering, but the person most surprised was All Might. The new moves Deku had created were stunning to All Might. All Might ran out to the field to congratulate everyone who passed the test. All Might walked up to Deku and patted him on the head. Good job, young Midoriya, and thank you for helping all your friends, All Might said. Everyone went back to their dorms. Today was a long day, Deku said. Time to catch some sleep. Deku fell onto his bed and switched to sleep mode as soon as he landed on the bed. Deku had accidentally left his phone on and it fell onto the floor and a video turned on. Hello there, a voice from the phone said. I am a villain named Vicious Playo. Come and stop me, heroes. I'm coming for you. Deku heard a little part of this video before he fell asleep. He knew what was coming up. A new challenger. Zero comment. Chapter 7. The newest challenger. Deku woke up early so he had time to find that new villain. He ran out of the building and onto the streets. Deku looked around everywhere, and while he was looking, he bumped into someone. Oh, sorry, dear sir, the stranger said. I'm kind of in a rush, let me just be on my way. Wait, Deku said, making the stranger stop. Deku's eyes lit up a bright green color. Deku walked up to the stranger. Have you seen some guy named Vicious Playo? Deku said to the stranger. By this point, the stranger was sweating and green lightning started surrounding Deku as well as a green aura. No, the stranger said, nervous. I'm a big fan of him, Deku said. Oh, well, he's a very handsome and nice person, but I don't know him. Sorry, the stranger said. Ah, Deku thought. He lifted his hand and flicked it. The air pressure sent the stranger flying and the stranger's hat and clothes flew off to reveal a tie and a creative costume. Deku activated One for All fully and ran towards the villain. Looks like you caught me, he said. Well, as you might know, my quirk is that I can bend and stretch and manipulate anything I want, whether it's with my mind or my hands, or whether it's metal or titanium, Vicious said. Deku didn't know this, but now he did. Thanks for that, Deku said as he lifted his arm. Smash! Deku yelled as he flicked his fingers, sending Vicious flying. Deku ran after him. Full cowling! Deku yelled as he ran. Nobody else was there to save Deku, and it was too late to run away from this challenge. Deku spin kicked Vicious in the stomach and he fell over. This was just the start of this battle. It's time to save you a comment. Zero comment. Chapter 8. Deku vs. Vicious Playo. Deku kicked Vicious in the arm, but he bended a light pole and let it hit Deku in the back. Deku fell onto the floor, his back hurting. He couldn't move at all. Deku pushed as hard as he could, and eventually he broke out. He turned around with his fist aimed at Vicious. Minnesota smash, Deku yelled as he punched Vicious in the stomach. Vicious spat blood out of his mouth and slowly fell over. Then he stood back up and punched Deku so hard, he was sent onto the top of a big building. Vicious jumped up to Deku and Deku did another flick. Smash, Deku yelled. The air pressure from the flick was deflected by Vicious using his manipulation quirk. Vicious made a dense air pocket that bounced all of the air pressure onto Deku. Deku was sent flying onto another building, but he slipped and fell off of the building. Vicious was looking at him with a crooked smile. Deku did another flick which sent him back into the air. He only had one shot at this. He grabbed Vicious' collar, and they both fell off of the building. Now that Deku was clinging onto Vicious, Vicious had no choice but to save them both. Vicious made another dense air pocket and it bounced Deku and Vicious up and down until they hit the floor. Deku instantly went into fight mode. California smash, Deku yelled. Deku's fist glowed bright green and power and lightning flowed through the air. Bam! Deku punched Vicious in the face so hard that he crashed into a bunch of buildings, rubble filling all the empty space. Deku nearly fell over from how much energy Hao was using. All for 125% smash, Deku yelled. All Might's power was flowing within Deku, and then he punched Vicious straight in the stomach. The impact and pressure caused a small tornado to form and flow through the rubble. Deku's hair starting blowing in the wind. The nerve of this man, Deku thought. He walked up to the man, holding back his anger. Deku picked the man up by his collar. Deku walked to the police station and turned him in. It was finally over. Deku went home just in time for class. He fell into the classroom. The city was saved. Zero comment. Chapter 9. The camp. Deku was excited for the day. He was on a bus taking home to the summer camp where it would all happen. This summer camp itself was mostly a big test and an attempt to get people out of their houses and dorms to do something. Are you excited, Deku? Uraraka said, sitting next to Deku. Bakugo was sitting down calmly with Kirishima next to him. Ida was sitting with Mina talking to each other about how excited they are. Jiru and Denki was sitting together, talking about their favorite music. Everyone else was excited and happy for the camp were talking to each other. Mina was thinking about all the ways this could go right, but Deku was thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. The bus drive lasted 4 hours. By the time they got there, half of the class was asleep. Deku kept his eyes peeled for villains. He didn't know that the League of Villains would be striking soon. They had a plan for all that was going to happen. All Might was out saving the city and was too busy to help Deku and his friends. That meant that Class 1A was alone on this trip. Deku thought about plans just in case disaster struck. He still had a few new moves up his sleeves. Deku took a few deep breaths and sank deep into his chair. The day was finally over and the decisions were left up to date. Zero comment. Chapter 10. Deku and his friends were just having fun playing volleyball when something moved in the bushes. The thing that moved distracted Koda, who was easily distracted. Koda followed the weird noise deep into the woods and onto a plain, bumpy, rocky area. Suddenly someone flew out of the bushes. It was Dabi. Dabi used his blue fire quirk to burn Koda, but right as Koda was about to feel the blow, Deku pushed him out of the way and took the hit. Deku wasn't mad at all. Sure, he was a little disappointed, but it didn't matter if he was trying to save a life. Deku's skin aches from the burn. They were far away from the camp so nobody could find them for a long time. Dabi looked at Deku and instantly recognized him. So you're the special boy that Shigaraki was talking about, huh? Dabi said. Deku didn't answer him. Deku started running towards him. Dabi pulled his arm back, ready to attack. Texas smash, Deku yelled. He punched Dabi in the face and Dabi was launched into a few trees and bushes. Dabi stood up. Prominence cremation, Dabi yelled as he created a blue fireball. This must be one of his new moves, Deku thought. Deku lifted his hand and flicked. The air flew Dabi away and deflected the fireball, but it did make the fireball bigger. Dabi pushed it back to Deku and a big explosion went off as Deku was hit by the fireball. Deku fell onto the floor. Dabi was about to finish him when someone saved him and Koda, it was Todoroki. Todoroki blocked Danny's blue fire with ice and then kicked Dabi in the arm. Deku hit his head on the fall and was unconscious. Todoroki also brought Bakugo with him. First, Koda called for birds to keep pecking Dabi and distracting him, then, Todoroki burned Dabi left and right and surrounded him with an ice cage. To finish it off, Bakugo let off a super big explosion that could be heard from 20 miles away. Everyone was sent flying, and after all the smoke cleared, Dabi was gone. Not dead, but gone. Everyone ran back to the camp and Todoroki carried Deku back to the camp. He noticed that Deku's arm was broken and instantly knew what had happened. It was just like Todoroki's brother to go for a sneak attack. But then, another thing happened. Zero comment. Chapter 11. Muscular returns. Deku, Todoroki, Bakugo, and Koda tripped over something. It was a rock. When Deku looked up, he saw that they were still miles away from camp, and he also saw his strongest enemy, Muscular. Deku never killed any of his villains, so Muscular's return was expected. And some of Deku's friends were here to help him. There was just one problem. Throughout all the time Muscular had been gone, he had been training like crazy just for this day. Deku stood up, ready to attack. Everyone else stood up as well, even Koda. First, Todoroki made one big fire ring around Muscular, then Bakugo let off a few explosions to distract Muscular. Deku then got ready for his attack. Arizona smash, Deku yelled. Bakugo caused a chain of explosions and kept punching Muscular. Todoroki kept burning and freezing Muscular. Then Deku punched Muscular in the face and Muscular was sent flying onto a little cliff area surrounded by rocks and rubble. Everyone followed him. Deku decided it would be best for Koda to get back to camp, and so he told Koda to run. Green lightning flashed around Deku, fire and ice flashed around Todoroki, and smoke was flowing from Bakugo and his hands. Deku's hair started to turn a light green and then teal. It was just like when he fought Overhaul. Bakugo's hair started to turn a bright yellow and an orange aura formed around him. Todoroki had a half red and teal aura and everyone's power started to rise. As soon as they arrived at the spot that Muscular crashed at, they started preparing their attacks. Bakugo and Todoroki made an explosion to deter Muscular and kept a safe guard around them. Deku flipped out of the smoke and prepared his attack. Deku hadn't packed his hero outfit, so all the attacks he attempted would push him to his limits. The same applied to Bakugo and Todoroki, who were also pushing themselves to their limits. Tennessee Assassination. Deku yelled as he punched Muscular in the gut. Muscular only had a scratch from that attack. "Is that all you got?" Muscular said. "That was weaker than the last one." Deku noticed Muscular was a bit bigger and his muscle fibers were also being pushed to their limits. Deku fell over. He couldn't handle it anymore. The pressure put on him from all the power he was using was unbearable. Everyone was nervous. Deku forced himself back up. "Shoot style," Deku yelled. "Type 3, Delaware, Detroit, smash," Deku yelled. Deku kicked Muscular in the face and his leg and foot broke. Muscular was just about ready to give up, but he launched one last attack. "Blood boil mode," Muscular yelled. Muscular got bigger, stronger, and became faster. He punched Bakugo away and kicked Todoroki onto the floor. Then he grabbed Deku by the hair and lifted him up. "Stupid kid," Muscular said. Deku couldn't move. Muscular threw him onto the floor. There was only one chance of them beating him now. Suddenly, someone came to the rescue. It was Tokoyami. Tokoyami unleashed his darkness. Dark Shadow kept punching Muscular left and right. Kids called for the help of wild animals to bite and scratch Muscular. This gave Deku and Bakugo and Todoroki the chance to attack. Bakugo stood up as Muscular was about to crush them. He punched the lump of skin and muscle fiber marks and blood clumps, and Todoroki did the same thing. Deku realized that he wasn't alone in this. Then he did it. His special move. Louisiana. Deku yelled as he rose up. Smash. Deku punched Muscular's muscle fibers as hard as he could. Lightning was striking around them and filling the air. Deku's fist started ripping through the muscle fibers and clumps of red skin. Finally, he broke through and his punch landed right on Muscular's face. Smash! Deku yelled, his voice cracking. Deku started pushing forward, and then Muscular was sent flying into the wall of rocks. Crash ha! Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo fell over. They did their job. Now the rest is up to hope. Zero comment. Chapter 12. The Hospital Trip. Deku woke up. He was in the hospital with Todoroki and Bakugo. Everyone else was at the camp. The League of Villains was still roaming around the camp. Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo were the strongest in the class. Now it's up to Tokoyami to save the class. Deku and the other two were super nervous. Without the Guardians, nobody could help the class. All Might was at the camp at least. The next thing to attack were the Nomus. They were buff mutant animals that were thirsty for blood. These Nomus had the strength of All Might. Deku's whole body aches, but he knew he had to help. An army of Nomus attacked the camp, but Deku and the others were in a hospital miles away. But then someone walked in, and that it was Eri. Eri places her hand on Deku and Bakugo and rewinded them back to the state they were in before the big fight. She did the same to Todoroki. She couldn't rewind them anymore because it would exhaust her quirk abilities. Eri did the best she could and started to fall. Deku stood up, caught her, and put her on his hospital bed. Come on guys, Deku said. Let's go save our class. Zero comment. Chapter 13. Attack of the Nomus. Just as a Nomu was about to pick Uraraka up, Deku kicked the Nomu in the face. This did no damage at all, but it distracted the Nomu. This gave All Might enough time to come in. Detroit smash, All Might yelled. All Might punched the Nomu in the face and his head exploded. Blood flew everywhere and the three left to join the class. Where have you been? Ida said. No time for that, Deku replied. Deku turned around. This time he had his suit. It was packed and brought to the hospital. Detroit smash, Deku yelled as he punched a Nomu in the gut. Deku was launched back from the pressure. The Nomu exploded into 1,000,000 separate bits. Arg my arm, Deku thought. Deku ran into a Nomu who picked him and threw him into Mina. Mina stood up and Deku did the same. You okay? Deku said to Mina. Yeah, I'm fine, Mina yelled back. Mina decided that she would push herself to her limits to help the class. She threw over 3 tons of acid on 14 Nomus and each of them shriveled up and burned to death. Tenya was using max speed, Uraraka was using her max gravity powers, Tokoyami was unleashing his dark storm attack, Ojiro was using his martial arts and speed, Kirishima was unleashing Red Riot Unbreakable, Denki was using his max thunder and lightning power, and everyone else working hard too. Everyone was nervous. Today was the start of a new chapter. Zero comment. Chapter 14. Class 1A Unleashed. Everyone in Class 1A decided to go for a sync attack. Class 1A Unleashed, they all yelled. They planned to use this sync attack whenever times were rough. Deku and all his friends landed the big attack and a massive explosion went off, disturbing the ears of anyone within a 15-mile radius. Most of the villains had disappeared and most of the class was lost. Deku stood and jumped. Minnesota SMAASSSSSE, Deku yelled. Deku quickly zoomed back down to the floor with his fist out. He hit the floor so hard that all the villains launched into the air. The rest of the class was elsewhere. Deku's bones snapped in half. Deku then spotted all the villains and once he landed, he followed the direction they were going. Deku suddenly ran into Dabi. Deku jumped up, dodging one of his fireballs. Shoot style, Deku yelled. Type 2, California smash, Deku then yelled. He kicked Dabi in the stomach and Dabi was sent flying into a tree. Dabi stood up with a smile on his face and blood under his eyes. Deku slowed his pace and walked towards Dabi. Deku only had one arm broken. He put his hand up and towards Dabi. Deku smiled. All Might always said to smile no matter the situation you're in. Smash! Deku yelled as he did a finger flick. The air pressure pushed Deku back and launched Dabi into the air, and he landed on a tall tree. Deku followed Dabi onto the tall tree. Then he saw it. A Nomu heading right for him. Deku jumped out of the way so the Nomu bumped into Dabi and they both fell onto the floor. Deku looked down from the tree and jumped. Mississippi, Deku yelled. Smashed, Deku used both arms to punch Dabi and the Nomu. A big explosion went off and Deku was launched into the air. He didn't know if the two down there were dead, but they definitely had to be unconscious. Deku landed on the floor and Todoroki picked him up. Todoroki saw a Nomu behind him. He burned the Nomu until it was burnt to a crisp pile of rotten skin and flesh. Deku thanked Todoroki and they continued running. Many Nomus got in their way but they killed most of them. One certain Nomu picked Todoroki up in his giant hand. This Nomu was extra big. None of these Nomus were being killed. Some were but most were just knocked out. Deku looked up at the Nomu holding Todoroki. You, Deku yelled. He jumped up but the Nomu swatted him away. Deku landed on the floor next to a tree. The Nomu walked towards Deku, trying to pick him up too. At this point, Todoroki was being squeezed harder than he's ever been squeezed. The Nomu must have been planning to crush him. Deku stood up angrily. He picked up a rock and threw it at the Nomu. The Nomu decided to unloosen his grip a bit and head for Deku. Deku jumped up and kicked the Nomu in the face. Todoroki was able to squeeze his hand and arm out. He burned the Nomu and then froze him. Todoroki slipped through the Nomu's icy, slippery hand and landed on the floor. The Nomu was walking towards them but way slower than usual. Deku turned around. They were surrounded by Nomus. Zero comment. Chapter 15. The Trip. Deku woke up on the bus. His class was now going home. The next test was in 2 months, so that gave the students time to rest. Nomus followed them the whole way, and when the class and Mr. Aizawa spotted one, they would send one student to attack it. Deku wasn't sent up there because his arm was broken. Deku looked up when each student went out. He felt bad that he couldn't help. He stood up as a giant Nomu came. Delaware smash, he yelled. He punched the Nomu away. BS30, he then said. Deku fell back into the bus. The arm he used wasn't damaged because of the suit. Dabi landed on top of the bus. He looked into the bus from the roof. What's up, losers? Dabi yelled. He picked Tenya up by his collar and threw him to the back of the bus. He started burning everyone. Bakugo quickly tackled him to the floor. You fell right into my trap, you narcissistic parasitic dipstick. Dabi yelled in Bakugo's face. A portal opened up and Dabi and Bakugo fell through it. Deku ran as fast as he could to reach Bakugo, but it was too late. Dabi and Bakugo has already slipped through the portal. Deku knew exactly who to call. Hello, can you come as fast as possible? Deku said with his phone in his hand. I'll be there before you can say straw hat, the voice replied. Deku smiled. A special guest was coming. Zero comment. Chapter 16. The Special Guest. The special guest walked up to Deku. He had a straw hat and he had the ability to stretch and limb he wanted to. Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy high-fived Deku. Haven't seen you in a while, Luffy said. Well, one of my friends got taken by villains and I need to save him, Deku replied. Then let's go, Luffy yelled. They both started running around town looking for the League of Villains hideout. Meanwhile, let me go, you BS, Bakugo yelled. Shigaraki looked at him with a smile. Listen, kid, he started. If I put all 5 fingers on you, it's over, he then said. So tell me where is All Might and where is your class? Bakugo wouldn't tell him a thing. All Might had long lost his quirk by now, and now was the best time to attack him. Suddenly, 2 people burst into the room. It was Deku and Luffy. Deku had planned this out and let his arm heal before this. Eri couldn't help because she was with Mirio. Deku jumped towards Dabi. Delaware smash, Deku yelled as he punched Dabi in the stomach. Dabi was launched back into the wall. Luffy was made of RBB because of the gum fruit. RBB was highly flammable, so Deku did anything he could to protect Luffy. He could have brought anyone else, but he brought Luffy for only 2 reasons. 1, for help, and 2. Gum Gum Hail, Luffy yelled as a barrage of fists rained down on the rest of the villains. That's why. Bakugo didn't know about Luffy, but he thought that his power was cool. Deku untied Bakugo. They weren't really done. Now that Bakugo was free, he could launch the attack. He set off a bunch of explosions. Deku was hitting left and right and testing out his moves, and Luffy was hitting up and down with all his might. Deku also brought Luffy because he was older, wiser, and stronger. The battle was finally over and the 3 boys ran out of the villain's base. Deku high-fived Luffy and he ran into a portal. He came back through another portal. Wrong portal, Luffy said. He then went through the right portal. I'm sure going to miss him, Deku said while running. Luffy landed on the ship he was on with his crew. The battle was finally over. Zero comment. Chapter 17. Another guest. Deku walked outside, got the sight of another portal. The person that came out of the portal had orange hair. This person looked like a nice person. Hi, Deku said to the stranger. I'm Deku. I'm Shoyo Hinata, the boy said. I play volleyball. Deku was happy. All of the people that came to Deku's world traveled because of a certain reason. I came here to learn more about your world, Shoyo said. Deku got this idea very well. If all these people were going to live in one big multiverse, they had to learn to get used to each other. After explaining quirks and how they work in Deku's world to Shoyo, he showed Shoyo around. He even introduced Shoyo to his friends. Can you show me one of your cool shots? Deku said to Shoyo. Sure, Shoyo replied. Shoyo had brought his ball just in case. Deku bounced the ball towards Shoyo and Shoyo smacked it into a tree and it bounced into Deku's hands. Deku was shocked. No need to go easy on me, Shoyo said to Deku. Deku threw the ball up and bounced it super high. Shoyo ran and jumped super high and smacked the ball. It hit the floor at max speed and Shoyo landed back on the floor. Deku was shocked. For a guy with no powers or supernatural abilities, Shoyo was an amazing player and an overall amazing person. Deku looked stunned. He was learning so much from this guy. A portal opened up and then everything went black. Zero comment. Chapter 18. The Crossverse Attack. Deku woke up on a volleyball court. Deku instantly knew he was in Shoyo's world. Now that Shoyo disappeared, they needed a player to replace him until he came back. Deku noticed that his powers were gone. He knew what to do next. Deku explained the situation to everyone and decided that he would help Shoyo's team win. After talking about rules and more, the game continued. Deku threw the ball up and smacked it with all his might. The ball hit the floor in the other team's side. The score was 23. Asahi threw the ball up and hit it to the other side. Tendo hit the ball back over with a grin on his face. Deku was having loads of fun and he hit the ball into the air. Tanaka ran over to the ball and smacked it onto the floor on the other team's side. Now the score was 24-23. Deku didn't want this game to end so soon, but he didn't hold back for his last shot. Tanaka threw the ball up and hit it over. Some guy on the other team hit it back and it happened. Kageyama hit the ball back and Deku ran to the ball. He jumped and smacked it as hard as he could and someone on the other team hit it. The ball went out. Karasuno won against Shirderwiza. Deku was shocked and so was everyone else. Meanwhile, in Deku's world, Shoyo was explaining the situation to everyone and how all of this happened. Suddenly, something happened. Zero comment. Chapter 19. The Crossverse Attack 2. In Deku's world, 2 villains showed up. It was Dabi and Toga. Shoyo had no time to go over quirks. He had to help Class 1A. Even though he had no powers, he had his own little quirks. He threw the ball up and hit the ball over to Dabi. It hit him on the head, distracting him for a bit. Shoyo ran over as fast as he could and jump-kicked Dabi in the face. Dabi spat some blood out. Toga noticed Deku wasn't there and she left. Dabi tried burning Shoyo, but Shoyo jumped too high. Shoyo kicked him in the arm and then swooped him off of his feet. He landed on the floor. It doesn't matter if you have powers or not, Shoyo yelled. Everyone has their own quirk. Everyone worked together to tie Dabi up and Shoyo joined. Suddenly, the portal leading to home opened up and started sking him in. Shoyo was transported home and so was Deku. Along the way through the infinite space of the portals, Deku and Shoyo high-fived each other. Shoyo landed on the floor in his world, and Deku landed on the floor in his world. Today, Deku learned a valuable lesson. Not having powers doesn't matter, because everyone has their own quirk. Zero comment. Chapter 20. The Training Disorder. All Might called Deku over to the beach. "Hello, young Midoriya," All Might yelled. "I brought you here to tell you that for the next 3 months and a few days, you're going to be doing hardcore training." Deku wasn't excited. Training was an essential part of getting anything in life, but sometimes it was just too much. Every day Deku would be doing 100 push-ups, 90 squats, 95 sit-ups, 25 crunches, and a 4.5-mile run. Deku wasn't excited for the next few months. The next day he woke up early and started. Deku started his run. He barely finished it, and then he started on the squats and others. He looked at All Might who was cheering him on. He didn't know that a new villain was in town. This villain was called Land Hero Assassin. Deku didn't expect anything new this summer. That's why this villain was so excited to break through and attack the city. Night Eye quickly called All Might and told him what he saw when he predicted the future. All Might was shocked. One for All had already left All Might, so it was up to Deku to save the city. Deku rose at the thought of helping someone. Deku ran to the city. He had nothing but a t-shirt and shorts. "Full cowl," Deku yelled. Deku had no idea how strong this villain was. One important piece of information was left out though. The villain's quirk. Without the quirk information, battling was useless. On the way there, All Might called Deku to inform him that the villain's quirk was that he could transform into anything he wanted to as long as he laid all 5 fingers on it. Deku took this information to heart and started running again. Luckily, he had already finished his workout. Deku just needed to make sure that Lan didn't touch anything with all 5 fingers. Deku ran as fast as he could and he eventually arrived at the place the villain was destroying. Deku jumped towards him. "Detroit Smash!" Deku yelled with a smile over. Deku looked up. Luffy taught Deku to always smile, Shoyo taught Deku that everyone has their own quirk, and Tanjiro taught Deku that blindly trusting people is a bad idea. Deku punched Lan in the face and Lan was sent flying into a tall building. Deku looked up. It was time for a special attack. Lan touched a lamppost and turned into it. Deku ran right past the lamppost and Lan turned back into himself and kicked Deku in the back. Deku turned around and Lan punched him in the nose. Then, Lan kicked his arm and picked him up by the hair. Lan threw Deku onto the floor. Deku slowly got up and then jumped from a slow stance to a quick, Delaware smash. Deku punched Lan, or at least he thought he punched Lan. He completely missed. Deku looked at the villain. How is he so strong? Deku thought. Deku slowly stood up again. Damn it, Deku thought. Now that I got into this battle, I can't get myself out. Deku knew that he was too slow and hurt to get away. Could this actually be the end for Deku? Lan then did something even more shocking. Lan pulled out a sword. Lan cut some of Deku's arm. "Oh usage," Deku yelled. A scar was on Deku's arm. Deku kicked Lan's sword in the air and caught it. "Leave this place and don't come back," Deku yelled to the villain. Lan smiled. Lan kicked Deku in the arm. He was launched into a tree. Deku had no choice but to run up to the villain and stab him. Once Lan was stabbed, Deku ran away as fast as he could. Damn it, Deku thought. I have to run. Run, Deku, run, All Might yelled from across the city. Deku ran as fast as he could. Full cowl, Deku yelled weakly. He only got halfway before he blacked out. Darkness. Zero comment. Chapter 21. Lan vs. Deku. Deku woke up quickly. Then he started running again. Lan was behind him, barely catching up. Lan pulled the sword out of him and threw it at Deku. Deku dodged the sword and jumped into the air as fast as he could. He flipped in the air and landed behind Lan. Lan didn't have enough speed to catch up. Deku kicked Lan in the arm. Lan stumbled back. Deku then punched Lan in the stomach. Lan punched Deku in the stomach and kicked him away. Deku jumped in the air again. Minnesota smash, Deku yelled. Deku punched Lan in the face and Lan was sent flying into a few buildings, rocks, and trees. Deku thought it was over, but Lan got up. By now, Deku's t-shirt was half torn and messed up. Deku ran up to Lan and the messed up buildings. Deku kicked Lan in the face and he fell over. Deku stomped the villains a few times and called the police to come and take him away. The police took the villain away and Deku ran home. He had never wanted to get home more in his entire life. He saw All Might and then he fell onto the floor and blacked out. What an amazing kid, All Might said as he picked Deku up. He truly is the next user of One for All. Zero comment. Chapter 22, The Visit. Deku heard someone ring the doorbell one day and looked to see who it was. Deku opened the door and didn't recognize the stranger. It was a man with green hair and a green mustache. Deku called his mom over to see who it was and she instantly recognized him. It was Deku's father. Deku was shocked. The man who had traveled to finish work was at his door. Deku was angry and sad and curious. Deku invited the man in to ask him some questions. "Why did you leave US?" Deku yelled to his dad. "I was just nervous about having a baby so soon," he replied. Deku understood him very well, but it still didn't make sense to him in some parts. If the father needed a break, he could have just asked for one. Deku was mad at his mom for lying to him. Inko always told him that his dad just went on business trips across the country. Deku walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. Inko and Hisashi were left alone to talk to each other. "I knew I shouldn't have told him," Hisashi said. This summer was going awful for Deku. Everyone in his class was at the beach or at some kind of camp or doing some kind of summer activity either at their dorm or their home. Deku came out of the bathroom and ran out of the house to tell All Might the news. Once he explained it to All Might, he relaxed a bit. All Might then told Deku about something that Night Eye told him. All for One was going to attack soon. Deku still didn't let go of the emotional pain that was his dad's return, but now, he prioritized stopping All for One. He already struck once, so someone had to kill him to ensure that he would never attack again. Deku froze at the thought of All for One killing All Might. "I will stop All for One no matter what," Deku said. All Might started training the boy even harder. All for One was one of the strongest villains in the entire world. Deku started the training. His body always ached when he got back home, but he figured that was the point. Deku called everyone in his class and told them the news. This battle was surely for Deku alone since he possessed One for All, but a little help here and there would be fine. All Might had lost One for All, so he couldn't help at all. The whole class met up to talk about All for One and how to stop him. Night Eye said that the date of the attack was September 23rd. Deku was the most nervous of them all. Deku looked down. What are we going to do? Deku thought. They needed to make roles and arrange plans. Deku called someone he knew. Well, multiple people he knew. He called everyone from across the anime multiverse. They needed all the help they could get. Now the endgame had begun. Zero comment. Chapter 23, The Shadow Demon. Deku was halfway done with summer. He just wanted this summer to be over so he could go to school and live life again. Deku had to train every day, he had to help people every day, and sometimes Deku would almost get killed. Deku looked up at the sky. "I'll manage it," he said. Deku sat down. Today was Sunday. All Might was going around the town saying hi to others and getting ice cream. If Deku wanted to end All for One, he would have to reveal his quirk to the class. All the anime characters from the multiverse were ready for September 23rd. It was the doomsday date. Deku gave his mom a goodbye and then went outside. "Time to see what I can do to help," Deku said to himself. Even Shoyo and his friends could help in the battle. Deku noticed someone's cat stuck in a tree. Deku jumped up and snatched the cat out of the tree. He gave the cat to the lady. "Thank you so much," she said. Deku was happy to see a smile on someone's face. Deku turned around. All small crimes mattered. Deku went to the gym to continue his training. He was still the same lean, scrawny kid he had been his whole life, but now he had a little muscle and abs growing in. Deku decided today was the day. Today, he would ask Uraraka out. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 24. The Ask Out. Deku brought Uraraka to a restaurant to tell her something. Uraraka had to apparently tell him something too. They decided to say it at the same time. 3, 2, 1. Deku held back his words and let Uraraka go first. Would you get me a date with Bakugo? Uraraka said. Deku was shocked. He shook and shook. He woke up. All the ask-out stuff was a dream. Deku was so thankful. He knew that the day would come. Just not today. Might as well just go back to sleep, Deku thought. He fell asleep again. Slelerm. Deku slumped over a bit. Where am I? Deku said. He was in a parallel consciousness. He couldn't feel any of his limbs. He shook and shook as much as he could, but he couldn't get up. Deku knew he wouldn't wake up for a while, so he decided to explore. Is that a monster? Deku said while looking at the outlining shadow of some figure. Deku walked up to the figure. The figure picked him up by the hair and threw him away. It was Lan. Deku flicked his finger. The air pressure sent Lan flying. What the hell is going on? Deku thought. He saw Ida walking up to him. Oh hey Ida, he said. Who are you, kid? Ida replied. Deku was confused. How was this possible? Then he saw something. A recorded video on a big screen. It was a video of All Might and Deku talking. Can I be a hero? Deku said in the video. All Might thought long and hard in the video. No. I'm sorry, kid, All Might said. Deku was shocked, both in the video and in real life. The video was viral. Deku knew what this was. Deku started crying immensely in the video. This was a world where Deku grew up to be a villain. He turned around to see a replica of him. The person had blood on their cheek. Deku was shocked. So you finally came, the other Deku said. A portal opened and Deku woke up. He was in the middle of the city and villain Deku was standing right above him. Deku kicked him away. Villain Deku had a knife in his hand. I am the parallel you that got rejected by the real world, villain Deku said. Deku kicked him in the arm and villain Deku dropped his knife. Deku pushed villain Deku onto the floor. Stay away from me, Deku yelled. Villain Deku tried to slice Deku but he missed. Deku punched villain Deku onto the floor. Deku roundhouse kicked villain Deku onto a building. Villain Deku's eyes lit up. Deku jumped in the air and dashed towards villain Deku. You be yesterday, Deku yelled. Ruining other people's days is no way to be a hero. Villain Deku looked at Deku in shock. So, you still have morals, huh? Villain Deku said. Deku started releasing one for all. This is the end. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 25. Villain Deku. Deku kicked villain Deku in the face. Then he swiftly turned around. Shoot style type 5, Deku yelled. Arizona smash. Deku kicked villain Deku onto the air. Villain flew back miles and miles and he landed on a tall building. Deku followed him onto the building. He figured that if villain Deku knew All for One, he could get some info about his plan. Deku looked down. All the characters from the anime multiverse had to help him to win. All for One had an army of anime villains. Deku kicked villain Deku. Villain Deku slid over to the edge of the building. Deku ran after him. Deku jumped onto villain Deku and the both rolled off of the building. Deku and villain Deku flew through the air and were soon going to hit the floor. Deku threw villain Deku away so villain Deku could land safely. Villain Deku landed on a few people, but nobody near him was harmed. Deku slammed onto the floor. Damn it, villain Deku yelled as Deku started to stand up. Why would he help me like that? Deku's hair started turning bright teal. Deku swiftly stood up and kicked villain Deku in the stomach. Villain Deku stumbled back. Deku turned around and started walking away. I'm not going to fight an innocent person that doesn't understand my morals, Deku said. Villain Deku jumped towards him. BSTD, villain Deku yelled. Deku bended down and dodged villain Deku's punch. I'm sorry, Deku yelled as he started to rise. His fist started glowing. Detroit smash, Deku yelled as he punched villain Deku in the gut. Villain Deku suddenly turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Deku was happy that he was gone. Deku fell over. Finally, Deku said, "It's the end." Deku closed his eyes and a portal opened. Darkness. Zero comment. Chapter 26, The Next Shonen. It was July. The summer months were coming to an end soon, and the war was getting closer. Deku flopped onto the floor. It was 85 degrees. Deku couldn't bear all the heat. He turned his fan on. High school was eventually coming to an end. Deku looked down. He had been fighting villains for the past month and training at the same time. He couldn't handle all of this anymore. Deku turned around and opened his door. After turning the fan off, he went outside to buy ice cream. All the villains were hiding out in small areas and secret places. Deku saw a robber robbing a bank. He almost didn't stop the robber. The robber shot a bullet out of his gun and Deku clutched his hand around it and crushed it. Deku dragged the robber to the police station. A portal opened. The person that came out of the portal had orange hair and a sword. Who's this bootleg shoyo? Deku thought. He didn't know much about the place this man had came from. The man used his sword to slice a strand of Deku's hair off. "Okay, that's it," Deku yelled. Deku had no idea how these portals kept appearing. Deku kicked the stranger in the face. "Who are you?" Deku said to the stranger. "I'm Ichigo and I'm from a world called Bleach," the man said. Ichigo means strawberries, Deku thought. Deku was getting distracted. Ichigo kicked him onto the floor. "I came to study your world," Ichigo said. "For the upcoming battle." Deku was stunned. "And you are getting in my way," Ichigo yelled. "Here we go again," Deku yelled as he leaped towards Ichigo. Zero comment. Chapter 27, A Knock Out of the Park. "Michigan Smash," Deku yelled. He punched Ichigo in the stomach and Ichigo was launched into a big building. Deku's fist started smoking. Deku ran towards Ichigo. Deku kicked him in the arm and then kicked him in the stomach. "This is no way to explore anyone's universe," Deku yelled with his arm back. "Delaware," Deku yelled. "Detroit." Ichigo prepared his sword. "Smash," Deku yelled, his voice cracking immensely. Deku punched Ichigo's sword and it broke into a ton of little pieces. Ichigo was shocked. Deku started to walk away. Ichigo ran towards him. "Face me, you goody two-shoes," Ichigo yelled angrily. Deku dodged Ichigo's attack. Deku started running away. "Can't you calm down for once?" Deku yelled back to Ichigo. Ichigo started punching Deku left and right and Deku dodged all the hits. He kicked Ichigo back. "Time to finish this," Deku thought. He kicked Ichigo into the air and punched him up and down. "Texas. Delaware. Detroit. Zero comment. Chapter 28, The Throwdown. Before reading this episode, sorry that everything has been weird and stupid, my mind is just weird. I hope you understand and enjoy the episode. Deku punched Ichigo in the stomach and Ichigo fell onto the floor. Deku saw a portal open up behind him. He dragged Ichigo over and threw him into the portal. Ichigo was finally gone. Deku walked to his school, greeting Uraraka on the way. "Happy summer," Deku said to her in a bad mood. "What's wrong?" Uraraka asked. "I've been preparing for a huge battle with All for One, I've been fighting countless villains, and I don't have you as a girlfriend," Deku said back. Wait, what was that last one?" Uraraka said. "Nothing," Deku replied. Deku looked down. "Something on your mind," Uraraka said. Deku looked up. "Well, I'm in love with someone," Deku said. "Who?" Uraraka said quickly. "Well, it's a person with brown hair and a round face," Deku said. "At least that's what Bakugo says." Uraraka looked at Deku. "Deku," she said. Zero comment. Chapter 29, The Hot-Headed BSTRD. Before Uraraka could finish her sentence, Bakugo walked through her and Deku. Usually, Deku would say nothing, but this time, he had had enough. He was tired of Bakugo's obnoxious antics. He started yelling at Bakugo. "What's your problem?" Deku started off with. "I was talking to Uraraka, and you just messed up the conversation." Bakugo turned around. Deku didn't want to get into a fight, and he didn't want to get Uraraka involved. Bakugo started talking. "What did you just say?" Bakugo said. "You heard me, you maniac," Deku said back. Deku started to get nervous. Bakugo tried to punch Deku, but Deku and Uraraka had already started running away. "You won't kill me today," Deku yelled. Uraraka said the same thing. Deku and Uraraka ran into the UA building. Surely, all the teachers would try to stop Bakugo. Mr. Aizawa erased Bakugo's quirk, and then All Might held Bakugo back. Deku and Uraraka were relieved. Bakugo was instantly sent to the principal's office. Bakugo's quirk was temporarily erased, but he could yell just as well, maybe even better. The principal yelled at Bakugo to stop his stupid antics. Bakugo felt ashamed. He left the office without saying anything. Deku was even more nervous. Now that he got Bakugo in trouble, he felt like Bakugo would be a lot more trouble for him. Uraraka looked at Deku. They both walked outside and Uraraka continued. Uraraka started. Deku.I. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 30, Uraraka's Message. Uraraka explained her big crush to Deku, and Deku passed out for 25 minutes because of all the shock. When he woke up, he was in his house with Uraraka sitting next to him on the couch watching TV. On TV was Deku's favorite hero, All Might. Deku blinked a few times and then went to the bathroom. He didn't even notice Uraraka was on the couch. Deku poured water on his face and realized that what had just happened wasn't a dream. Deku went to the living room and saw Uraraka. "Eish!" Deku yelled, shocked at Uraraka's sudden appearance. Deku realized that she was here for a good reason and sat next to her. Deku started talking. "So," he said, "what were you going to say before dash?" Deku was interrupted by a knock on the door. Deku opened the door and saw Bakugo. Deku dodged a swift punch from Bakugo and quickly asked what Bakugo was doing at his door. Deku's mom was upstairs, watching TV with Deku's dad. Bakugo didn't answer Deku, so Deku pushed Bakugo away and closed the door. At least he tried to close the door. Bakugo kept the door open with his foot. "I'm here for her," Bakugo yelled as he pointed to Uraraka. Deku pushed Bakugo outside, followed him, and closed the door behind him. Uraraka watched their argument from the window. "Go away," Deku yelled. Bakugo punched Deku in the face and yelled something back. "I deserve her more than you, UBSC," Bakugo yelled. Deku looked down. One for All was unleashing. Full Cowl was rising. "If you think you deserve anything more than what you already have, then you have the wrong thing coming for you, you stupid, narcissistic, villainous BS," Deku yelled back. Bakugo tried to attack, but Deku's foot was already in the air. Deku's foot slammed on top of Bakugo's head. Bakugo let an explosion off and Deku was knocked far back. Deku kicked Bakugo into a tree. Bakugo started to sweat. Deku wasn't a supporter of violence, so he tried to keep the damage to a minimum. Uraraka was still watching from the window, scared. Today was the day that the war between Deku and Bakugo rised. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine. Oh god, not to make two characters who never confess their love actually confess their love. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 31. Deku vs. Bakugo. Deku kicked Bakugo in the arm. Uraraka knew that if she told the truth, Bakugo would hurt her. Bakugo wasn't afraid to hurt anybody. "Minnesota smash," Deku yelled. He punched Bakugo in the stomach and Bakugo slumped over. "Die!" Bakugo yelled as he set off an explosion on Deku. "Bleach," Deku yelled. Deku fell through trees and trees till he finally stumbled and tripped onto the floor. Bakugo was quickly running up to Deku. Deku kicked Bakugo in the stomach and Bakugo stood back. Deku had learned a few tricks from his anime friends. "Gum Gum Bell," Deku shouted as he head-butted Bakugo. Bakugo set off multiple explosions on Deku. Deku's hand reached out through the smoke and punched Bakugo in the face. Bakugo was launched back onto the floor and debris piled up more and more. Deku kicked Bakugo in the stomach. "This will teach you." Deku kicked Bakugo away. Bakugo crashed through trees and landed on the roof of Deku's mom's house. Deku jumped onto the house and kicked Bakugo away. "Shoot style," Deku yelled as he jumped straight towards Bakugo with his leg back. "Explosive murder," Bakugo yelled. Bakugo set of a chain of explosions. Boom boom boosh boom boosh. Deku stumbled back. His legs stretched a bit. In the name of all the anime universes, Deku yelled. Deku landed a direct hit on Bakugo's head. Bakugo smirked. All Deku's energy depleted after Bakugo used his explosions on him. I've been trying a new skill, Bakugo said as Deku slouched over. Energy depletion bombs. Deku fell onto the ground. Bakugo started to walk away, but before he could, he tripped Bakugo and Bakugo fell off of the roof. It wasn't a very big house, but falling from the roof would hurt. Deku crawled to the edge of the roof and watched Bakugo struggle to stand. Uraraka is somewhere in the house. Deku crawled off of the building and fell onto the floor. Deku's body hurt and so did Bakugo's. Bakugo slowly stood up. Bakugo crushed Deku by standing on him. No. No you don't, Deku yelled. Deku pushed Bakugo off. Bakugo got Deku in a chokehold. For Goku, Deku yelled, not knowing much about Goku. He bit Bakugo in the arm and Bakugo screamed in pain. Deku kicked Bakugo in the nuts and then punched him in the face. Bakugo looked at Deku. Heh, Bakugo muttered. Time to D-dash. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 32. A battle worth fighting. Deku jumped back. Blood came out of Bakugo's mouth. Deku had punched him so hard that it drew blood. Bakugo passed out. Deku passed out as well. Uraraka ate a snack and then went outside. As if I'd ever fall for you Bakugo, Uraraka said. Bakugo shook a bit. Uraraka stepped on his head. Bakugo was finally and actually out. Uraraka carried Deku inside. Deku was very lightweight, so it wasn't hard. Bakugo and Deku had wounds and blood all over them. Deku woke up 40 minutes later. Deku had nothing but a towel and he was sweating immensely. Uraraka was watching TV while sitting on the floor. So you woke up? Uraraka said. Deku stood up slowly. Uraraka covered her eyes. You need to rest Deku, she said. Where are my clothes? Deku muttered. Uraraka pointed upstairs. Deku sat on the floor upstairs after he was done dressing. He was wearing his hero suit. I'm going to help Bakugo, Deku said as he walked outside, closing the door behind him. Bakugo get up. Bakugo started to rise. He had never seen such nice treatment. Bakugo betrayed Deku and threw him to the floor. You pathetic little fool, Bakugo shouted. Bakugo stepped on Deku's arm. Deku yelled in agony. Bakugo crushed Deku's arm more and more. Deku punched Bakugo in the nose and kicked him onto a tree. You call that a shot? Bakugo said. No, Deku replied, holding the tree tight. But this is... He let go of the tree and Bakugo was catapulted far. Far away. Deku sat down. A worthy opponent, Deku said as he passed out again. Now it's over, he thought. The end of the chapter. See if you got the reference. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 33. Overtaken. While Deku was taking a walk, he slipped and fell onto the ground. Someone suddenly stepped on his back and pushed as hard as they could. Ouch, Deku yelled loudly. He looked up to see that it was a buff, tall man with a cigarette in his mouth. Nice to see you, Deku, the man said. Deku pushed the man off of him and started running away. Deku jumped up to dodge the man's punch. Deku didn't know that this was one of the strongest villains in the world. The man launched a punch that couldn't be dodged. Deku prepared for death. Deku finally landed on the floor, but he didn't get hit. He finally looked up to see his father. The man's fist had gone straight through Deku's father's chest. Deku's father fell to his knees and smiled. He put his arm on Deku's shoulder. Dad, why did you? Deku muttered. Tears filled his eyes as he was at a loss of words. I know that one day you will be the greatest hero, Deku's father muttered. And the fact that I wasn't there from the start, he continued as Deku kneeled down next to him, is too much time for me as a dad. He finally finished. I love you, son. Goodbye. Deku's father fell to the ground. He clenched his fist. I'm going to kick your butt, Deku yelled. Deku launched a parade of fists all over the villain. Deku wanted to hear the explanation. Deku didn't usually kill his enemies, but he was forced to this time. Eri was at Aizawa's house. She didn't have the chance to rewind Deku, so he held back a bit. If this is what all villains were like, Deku was ready to beat them up. His class and the people from other anime universes beating the villains, and Deku beating all for one. Deku finally slammed the villain to the ground. He picked his dad up and with all his strength, lifted him to an empty gravestone with no body buried. He didn't bury his dad, and rather just left him there. Deku's whole summer was ruined. Zero comment. Chapter 34, August. It was now August 14th. The big day was getting closer. Deku had a wimpy smile on his face. He was limping his way home. He had broken his leg training that day. Deku looked around the city. He saw All Might through the glass of a building. Deku ran towards the building and kicked the door open. All Might was thanking Deku over and over. Deku saw Tamura Shigaraki standing next to All Might. Tamura had the chance to end All Might forever. Deku punched Tamura away. The cast on Deku's leg faded away. Tamura managed to touch Deku's leg before he got punched away. Deku untied All Might and All Might ran away. Deku looked at Tamura. Tamura was unconscious. Deku left the building, wondering if all of this was really happening. Deku saw All for One. He punched All for One away, only to realize that it wasn't him. It was a mirage. It was a hot day, but that didn't mean mirages. That meant me. Zero comment. Chapter 35. Anime Communication. Hey Luffy, Deku said. Luffy looked up at him. There's a monster in this world, Luffy said as he started to fade away. And we'll all be here for you, Luffy said as he finally disappeared. I knew it, Deku said. Anime communication, he yelled. Anime communication was a way of talking that was long distance and easy to read. It would simply be other anime characters sending messages or funny pictures or moments, and even holograms. Deku looked around. He saw Tanjiro saying hi, Shoyo passing by, and Luffy eating rye bread. Deku smiled and sent a funny gif of him falling on his face to all the anime characters. Hee-ha, Deku started laughing. Deku never knew this type of communication could be so fun. He walked towards his school, assuming All Might was there. But the person that opened the door wasn't from his school. Zero comment. Chapter 36. The New Kid. The person looked the same age as Deku, had bright white hair, and a big smile. Hello there, the person said kindly. The person was a new kid in Class 1B, because Monoma had gotten kicked out of the school. My name is Clifford Tayashi, the person said. Deku smiled. I'm Deku. Deku replied. You must be the new kid in Class 1B everyone was taking about, he continued. Get to class, the principal yelled. Deku and Clifford went to class. Deku sat in class, thinking about the cool new kid. Deku excused himself to the bathroom and stood near the sink. Deku looked around, and then pulled out his phone. He was watching funny videos. Deku usually paid attention in class, but it was break time anyway. Deku kept watching and watching. So, you like being a bad person? A voice said. Zero comment. Chapter 37. The Hall Guard. Deku looked up to see Cliff. Deku was taking school after school was already over so he could learn, but he didn't expect Cliff to be here. He just expected Cliff to be somewhere else. Deku was confused. I'm the Hall Guard, Cliff yelled. Now get back to class. Deku finally left the bathroom with Cliff behind him, making sure he wasn't wandering off. Deku didn't realize that Cliff was so strict. Cliff spotted another kid slacking and ran after him. Deku ran away. He was finally away from Cliff. That JRK, Deku said. What JRK? Cliff said, appearing in front of him. How did you? Deku was at a loss of words. With my teleportation memorization quick, I can remember anyone's face and instantly teleport near them. Cliff yelled at Deku. Deku the point in the quirk. It's a great quirk for sneak attacks. Deku relaxed a bit. He put one foot ahead of him and ran away. Cliff teleported to Deku over and over. Deku had a genius plan. Cliff was overexhausting his quirk, so eventually he would have to lay back and he would slow down and crash. Deku looked around. He had finally lost Cliff. He ran into the janitor's room. Deku grabbed a broom as he heard a noise coming near him. The door finally whooshed open and Deku just hit what he could feel. Wham! Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 38. Oh no! Here for class, Midoriya? The man said. Oh? Deku said. Deku instantly recognized the droopy eyes and the ragged hair. Mr. Aizawa? Deku muttered. I'm just here to get a few extra bucks, Aizawa said. Deku tried to sneak away, but he got caught. You're coming with me, Aizawa said. Deku jumped onto a janitor bucket and crawled through vents. Aizawa ran through hallways and stood at the other side of the vent. Deku rested and stayed in the vent. I'll have to hide out here, Deku said. Deku was the only one who could fit in the vents. He was a small person. The next day, Deku woke up. It was early morning and nobody was at the school yet. Deku crawled to the other side of the vent and ran all the way home. A car was following him. Oh no you don't, the person on the car yelled. Deku ran and ran and ran. He crashed into some barrels and fell onto the floor. The car got closer. Hurry up and get in, the person yelled. Oh here we go, Deku said. He recognized the raspy and scratchy young voice. None other than Straw Hat Luffy. Zero comment. Chapter 39. Luffy the Loser. Luffy didn't know how to drive so he crashed around and into some trees. Luffy and Deku ran away. Luffy stretched his arms and launched him and Deku away. Suddenly Deku was slow and tired, then he fell to the floor. No way, he muttered under his breath. Luffy looked back. Mr. Aizawa. Mr. Aizawa had cancelled his quirk so he could run. Deku jumped and jumped, but he couldn't make. Aizawa caught Deku by the foot and slammed him onto the ground. Deku shrieked as he looked behind him. Aizawa dragged him to the principal's office. Deku was sweating buckets, tears of shame pooling down from his eyes. He had never been to the principal's office. The two big doors opened and a big light came out. It was the principal. Zero comment. Chapter 40. Expulsion. The air was thick and blank. Deku couldn't feel anything around him, as if he weren't real. Expulsion, Principal Nizu said. Nothing Principal Nizu said stuck to Deku's mind as much as this. He felt brittle, as if he could be pushed over by a quick tap. He stood up, basically ready to accept defeat. All Might came into the room. You mustn't give up, young kid Midoriya, said All Might. He was extremely energetic. Midoriya started to walk out of the room when his phone rang. He picked it up and heard a familiar voice on the other side. So we meet again, said All for One in his usual sinister voice. Deku replied quickly. Wait, you're not All Might, All for One shouted. Seems that they let him have a quick phone call, Nizu said, trying not to change the subject from Deku. Well my boy, I have 20 seconds, so let me put it simply, All for One started. You can steal quirks. Deku looked around the room at everyone's shocked faces. Something about my DNA getting into the blood system or something. All for One said. Anyways, say hi to All Might for me. The phone cut. Silence. Deku looked around. Silence. Yuda can steal quirks? Zero comment. Chapter 41. The Raid. Deku sat down. He had just been suspended from UA, and started to rethink his whole life over. He was paranoid. Is this my last chance? He kept wondering. He stood up. He punched the wall with all his might. The wall was cracked and damaged. He pulled back his bleeding fist and sat down once again. Gone for a week, he said. How much trouble could be caused in that time? Meanwhile at UA. Dabi, some kid muttered. People around the school spotted a pale, spiky-haired man walk into the room. He was wearing a dark bluish jacket, and his skin had burns and marks. Deku had a sudden realization and started running outside for a bit. Dabi started scorching the students and grown-ups. Deku felt his heart beat. He had never done something stupid like this. Dabi was burning them all. Deku was rushing and rushing as fast as he could. Dabi swept around the corner running to find more people to burn. The students that he had previously scorched had just barely survived, thanks to Mirio showing up. Dabi eventually found Mirio right in front of him, and punched Mirio in the face. Mirio dodged, but wasn't expecting Dabi's arm to be out and in the open. Flames erupted from Dabi's other arm, and Mirio was pushed aside. Mirio couldn't even feel his bones at this point. Dabi was torturing Mirio, kicking him, punching him and burning him. Mirio was coughing blood, and started to see how superior Dabi was when he was angry. A sudden burst through the doors made Dabi turn around. "Stop touching him, you creature!" Zero comment. Chapter 42, Dabi's Dilemma. Deku threw himself towards Dabi. "Smash!" he shouted. He knocked Dabi back a bit, but compared to a pro-villain, Deku's punches were nothing. He started to release some more power. Spoilers: Deku's second quirk, Black WHP, had activated. It was a painful activation, and he started falling to the ground, shaking. He couldn't feel his limbs and bones. The whole world began to shake around him. A headache. He was pushing too far. His anger was rising. He stood back up again. More power was being released. One of the black tendrils surrounding Deku shot towards Dabi. It pinned him to the wall. He leaped towards Dabi and started kicking and punching him. Todoroki walked in, and Dabi smiled. He paused, then walked towards Dabi. He was furious. Dabi started talking. "Shoto," he said. Todoroki kicked him in the stomach. "Don't call me by my name, Tuya," he yelled. "So you figured it out," Dabi muttered. Todoroki punched him in the face. He was sick of looking at his face. He drew his fist back and knocked Dabi out of the room, Deku's tendrils following. Dabi started running. Heart pumping, eyes watering, Todoroki ran after him. "I'm getting Awa dash," Dabi muttered before getting stopped. A massive icicle had gone through his chest and stomach. Todoroki sat down. He was exhausting his quirk. Mirio made his way to the nurse, and Todoroki looked at Dabi. "Please, would you be as kind as to bring me to a hospital?" Dabi said. Todoroki was tired of this. He drew his fist back and socked Dabi in the face. He pulled Dabi off the spike. "I'm feeling rather benevolent today," Todoroki said. He knocked Dabi out and started dragging him to the hospital. He was losing a ton of blood, and Todoroki didn't know if he was gonna survive. He finally burst into the hospital room to see Endeavor. Zero comment. Chapter 43, Endeavor's Mistake. "Hey kiddos," Endeavor said once he saw Dabi and Todoroki. He instantly became wide-eyed and looked away. He had just called Dabi one of his kids. "Tuya," Endeavor then said. He sat up and started talking. "I'm sorry to both of you and what I've caused," he started. "The whole city's on a riot," he then said. Todoroki couldn't believe what he just heard. He lay Dabi down on the hospital bed, and then he walked outside of the room. He left the building, and sure enough, there was a whole parade of people outside protesting and rioting for something they wanted. Most of the signs said better quirks. Some said better heroes. He tried calming people down, but it didn't work. He brought out his ice to move the people all to the nearest McDonald's. Todoroki was tired. He couldn't even stand to use his quirk, so he fell flat there. Dabi was breathlessly trying to talk, but not much was coming out. "Dad," he said. "Son, even if you die with all the bad things you've done, I'll meet you in heaven," Endeavor said quietly. "Not like I can't handle the fire and burn of hell," Dabi said. His voice was cracking. The heart rate monitor was beating quicker and quicker, and it eventually started to slow down. Dabi shut his eyes with one final smile, and just like that, he was gone. His soul had faded away, leaving only a tiny fragment of Tuya Todoroki. Dabi was a good man at heart. He regrets the bad things and always gets the job done when he needs to. But the bullying gets out of hand when you're a villain. He would always hate those people running around and saving lives from eternal danger. But in true heart, he loved everybody. His hair was still waving. True colors were finally showing. Dabi never wanted to hurt anyone. Everyone just wanted to hurt him. Zero comment. Chapter 44, The Misery Dome. Deku was out on a jog, clearing his mind, when he saw Todoroki following sharply behind him. The air was cold and speedy, pelting him with every blow. He started talking. "Do you miss him?" Deku said. Todoroki was silent. His hair was blowing in the rough air. Leaves were flying out and about, some landing on Deku's hair. "I do," Todoroki said. Deku looked at him. Deku still couldn't believe the news. The rest of the class tried cheering them up, but it was nothing close to what Todoroki said. "I'm glad there are people here to make me smile," Todoroki said as he grinned. Deku looked happier than he had ever been in the last few months. Apparently, they had lost track of where they were going. The air was thickening slowly. Huge gushes and waves of wind were pushing Todoroki and Deku back. Then Deku saw something strange. A big house was past a fence, locked up and guarded by two large men. The air was getting even stronger. Long chains surrounded the house, and the dark gray painting that had been there previously was started to fade. Deku walked closer and closer so he could hear what the two guards were saying. "View cheese and .10 bodies," the guard said. His talking was faint and Deku could barely hear it. He only heard a few words every second. The other guard wasn't saying much. He opened the fence slowly and walked in, soon followed by Todoroki. "This is a dumb idea," Todoroki whispered. Maybe Todoroki was right, but Deku wouldn't budge. He sensed a foul presence coming from inside the building. Something dark. The wind blew his hair even stronger. "I'll come too, but only for backup Midoriya," said Todoroki. Maybe this was a dumb idea. The guards had large barking dogs that looked like they wanted to tear someone apart. Deku and Todoroki took a different path and got in through the back of the house. Todoroki got cut on a little branch hanging out, and then they move on. They were now in the kitchen of the house. The evil presence was coming from upstairs. It was hungry, desperate for blood. Deku started to walk towards the door that led to the living room, when suddenly he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. "Almost ready, sir," one of the guards said. Deku didn't recognize that voice, so he figured it must have been the other guard that didn't talk much. The door to the kitchen slowly opened, revealing the villain in a mysterious dark light. The air was darker and even stronger than before. Deku felt like his happiness was draining away completely. He couldn't feel his limbs at all, and felt like he would regret what he was about to do. He quickly snuck up behind the villain. The air was tense and was extremely rough and strong. Deku was sweating nervously. He grabbed a key that was in his pocket and started to walk slowly back. He and Todoroki left through the back door. The air was less rough, but still with hints of darkness and misery. Deku saw a wooden ladder at the side of the house and decided to climb up. Todoroki was still sneaking around inside the house. Todoroki and Deku had eventually met up when they had gotten up the stairs. They were easily able to spot the villain, due to the rough and misty heat that was radiating off of him. He was a dark shadow, nothing more than a silhouette with two dots for pupils. Todoroki closed the door behind them, and thus, the fight started. Todoroki used ice on the room when suddenly, Zero comment. Chapter 45. Impenetrable Defense. The ice hit the shadow, but it bounced right off and shattered as soon as it hit. Deku was surprised, to say the least. And so was Todoroki. The shadow turned around, revealing him. He looked no older than 24, in fact. He was around Chisaki's age. He had rough and scraggy black hair, and a blue jacket with black breathes. The room was filled with tension. Long, red drapes hung from the ceiling, blocking the window. The floor was wooden, and Deku had to try his best not to slip on the wooden floor. The room was dark, and only 2 torches were able to light it up. Although, even with all those facts, the biggest of all was that the room and the house itself was massive. The boy started walking towards them. "Portal punch," said the villain. Deku started inferring what his quirk could be about. He finally had come up with it after watching Todoroki fight with the boy for a bit. The boy's power was that he could transport his body through portals, and his enemy's body parts and body through parts, basically leading them wherever he wants. Portals. Basic and simple portals. Deku jumped towards the villain. The air was thick with bloodlust and anger. Fury, regret, misery, it all mixed together to make a foul feeling in. Through. Deku felt the feeling, and by the look of Todoroki's scared face, he could tell Todoroki felt it too. Deku threw his fist towards the boy, but he had already been put through a portal, and was aiming straight for himself. Deku's fist landed in his face. Fako, Deku thought. He jumped towards the boy so he could show Todoroki what to do. Deku pretended he was going to kick the boy, so the boy obviously put up a portal. Deku dodged the portal and started nearing the boy. He was doing the fake-outs for every portal the boy made. Smash! Deku yelled. He socked the boy right in the face, launching him across the room. The boy tumbled and fumbled, losing his balance every time he tried to stop falling. He finally crashed onto the wall, and Deku started to relax. The air was still killing him, but he regretted nothing. Todoroki quickly put up an ice wall, and Deku ran around it right as it was forming. Deku and the boy were now alone. He punched the boy repeatedly in the stomach. The boy was coughing over and over, taking each blow willingly. Deku was scared. What was he planning? Deku finally kicked him so hard that the boy flew through the building. The boy suddenly stopped in midair and started forming into something. Something vile. Gross. And pure evil. The souls of others had been fused with him, making the misery magister. Zero comment. Chapter 46. Misery Magister. The Misery Magister, the boy shouted. The greatest of the small villains in this town. Deku was sick of hearing him talk. He and Todoroki started pulverizing the boy, and the hits were barely doing any damage. All the hits left were a few scratches. The Misery Magister blasted both the boys away. There was a deep, lurking feeling in Deku's stomach. Regret. Hate. Disorder. He started to fall apart. The last few months had been frightening. He couldn't have been built for this, right? Even the strongest hero in the world couldn't handle all this stress. He wasn't able to handle anything. He was still a weakling. No change. Nothing. Nothing at all. These thoughts beat himself up, and he felt like a loss and a gruesome death was right around the corner. I don't know where you got this behavior from, young Midoriya, said a voice in his head. The voice was All Might. Deku looked around. Half his shirt was entirely gone, and his arms were already messed up enough. Now, you need to go plus ultra, said the voice. There is no glory if you have already given up. All Might's right, Deku thought. I need to end this in one final punch. Deku channeled all his one-for-all energy into his arm, and he was ready to fight. He was jumping across block from block in midair. He was cutting it close with this battle. The air was moistening, and soon enough, it started to rain. He was slightly slipping on each new block he jumped on, but keep his balance. Todoroki set up a giant ice trail leading straight to the boy. Deku pulled his fist back. Smash! Deku yelled as he knocked the boy out of the air. Deku finally felt relieved. It was all over. Or at least he thought it was. The boy got back up and he was angry. Fleshy arms and legs came out of his body. Tons of souls were trapped inside him. Deku couldn't believe it. Without Eri, he couldn't use full power. And he basically just did. Deku's bone was shattered. He was basically dragging one useless and dead arm around. He felt like he couldn't win, so he sat down and let Todoroki. He set up a few ice spikes that blasted some of the arms and legs and limbs away. Deku thought about calling for help, but changed his mind. He and Todoroki would probably be expelled if UA found out they were here. But it's not much of a problem if I'm already going to probably get expelled, right? This is another thought that bounced in Deku's mind. The wind was pushing every second, becoming stronger and stronger. Mist and fog surrounded Todoroki and the Misery Magister. Deku felt like his stomach was tied in a knot. Todoroki blazed a smoky fire trail around the boy, trapping him. The boy was about to escape, but Todoroki put all his effort and made the fire burn harder and rise higher. The flames were excruciatingly hot. Even Deku could feel them, and he was quite a bit away. He backed up a little bit more. Todoroki then jumped into the ring and punched the boy around. He set up a huge ice spike that went right through the boy's chest. The boy fell over. He had one final attempt. He stabbed himself with a needle and closed his eyes. Zero comment. Chapter 47. Plus Ultra. The boy got up with a quick jolt and a sudden sensation of pure energy. Deku was confused. He and Todoroki jumped in the ring once more. Deku was punching the boy about, but his defense was on peak. Todoroki burnt and froze the boy to the point of insanity, and Deku was able to crawl behind the boy and rapidly punch and kick him in the back. The boy was coughing, but eventually caught Deku's leg and threw him into Todoroki. Deku couldn't stand the heat for much longer, and figured that he and Todoroki had to work harder if they wanted to win. Deku started pushing all his power out, and so did Todoroki. They were hoping that Eri would heal them later. The air and heat were blowing even harder, making perfect harmony in the blaze of the night. The misery magister regrew all the limbs, and jumped towards the boys. He could finally withstand the heat. "Say hi to Satan for me," he shouted. "Plus Ultra." Deku and Todoroki shouted. Elemental smash. Ice, fire, and dark shadows were traveling everywhere. They were landing hit by hit on the boy, and when the boy was tired out, they finished him off. Elemental crater. They both shouted. A huge crater in the ground quickly became visible. Smoke was coming out of it, blowing the air even harder. The boy lied in that pile of rubble, lifeless. All the souls that were trapped instantly sped out of him and traveled across the world, most likely to find their owner. Deku and Todoroki passed out on the spot. Luckily, Eri had been training her quirk and just happened to pass by. It didn't take rocket science to figure out that Deku and Todoroki had gotten into a fight, so Eri reversed them back to the state they were in at 8. They used the full power moves at 8. Deku had to be rewound a bit more because of his broken arm. And Todoroki did too, because a shard of ice was stuck in his shoulder. The boys, in the end, got to live another day. "Well, if it isn't you, Mr. Midoriya," a familiar voice said. It was .m.m. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 48, February's beginning. Bakugo was in the classroom. They had a special announcement going on, and he was prepared to jam anybody that got in his way. He was angry. Suddenly, a tall, lanky man with a very dark and long mustache walked into the room. He had a French hat and a black and white striped t-shirt. Pathetic, Bakugo thought. The rest of the class was listening, interested. Todoroki and Deku were watching the event on a small TV they had at the school. Cameras were set up around the whole building. Deku stood up from his hospital bed. "Where is the Missouri magister?" Deku asked. His words were slurred, and he could feel his body aching from all the pain. Eri had done good, but he had still taken damage from the fight. He decided to sit back down. He didn't even have feeling in some of his limbs. Deku realized that this wasn't the same hospital he had been in before. The walls were white, with a big red plus sign on every side of them. There were posters hung up on the walls, mainly to encourage the little kids that might have come here. Deku pushed himself up, and then walked out into the hallway. It was cold and breezy, for such a fine-looking day. Deku's hair flowed a little. He walked towards the front office. "Hey, where's the bathroom?" Deku sputtered. The man working there pointed to the next hallway beside Deku, and then Deku headed towards it. What a strange man. Deku muttered to himself. The man was tall, with orange hair, and business suit with a long tie. Deku pushed the thought away, and a few minutes later, he returned to the hospital bed. Deku felt like expulsion was inevitable. He was hoping that Todoroki would get expelled too, and at the same time, he was hoping that Todoroki wouldn't. If Todoroki did get expelled, he would truly blame Deku for the incident, because Deku was the one with the idea of going in the haunted house. And if only Deku got expelled, it would be even worse, because he wouldn't want to be alone in such a big mess. He felt awful. His stomach hurt, and the wind was blowing in his face because the window was open. Deku picked up a bottle of water and drank it all. He felt that he might as well have a drink before getting expelled from his dream school. All the hard work, said Deku in his mind. All for nothing. Deku felt even worse. Recovery Girl came in and gave them a chocolate bar. Eat this, Recovery Girl said. They both are their chocolate bars. It made them feel much better. Deku was able to get up and walk around, and Todoroki was able to jump up and down without hurting his ankles. Todoroki's arms were still very painful at that point. Deku asked for more chocolate, and he got more chocolate. It was sweet, with hints of caramel and white chocolate. Deku looked up at the ceiling. No, there is another chance. Deku thought. February was coming up soon. He could feel the power flowing through him. It all comes down to the big day. Zero comment. Chapter 49. A month's pass. A month went by. Deku couldn't even remember when All for One was returning. I think on March 7th? Deku thought. He couldn't remember. It was going to be a battle for the ages. All Might had heard about the return, so he went to the facility All for One was staying at, and told them to provide extra backup and chain up the building with extra protection and guarding around it, preventing All for One from escaping. All Might was paranoid, to say the least. Just what is he going to do, he thought. He was sweating a little. All for One was basically the god of quirks. As if he could pull anything when he's tied up securely, and guarded so well. All Might thought. He was brave, and truly believed that Deku had the power to win. All Might walked home and called Deku. It was time to train. Deku was learning new moves, when he looked to his right. He saw a dark shadow, like the ones he and Todoroki had seen in the building. Deku felt he was getting weaker. It was as if the pure soul and life energy was leaving him. Go away, he heard All Might say. Deku pushed himself up, but the amount of dark energy that was weighing down on him was too much. It was 3 times as strong as normal gravity. Deku was getting pushed down further and further until he eventually lay down. The pain was too much for him, and his eyes started to close. This feeling, this presence. It must be evil. Deku used all the strength he could muster to run towards the shadow. Smash! He shouted. He felt his fist touch something, and decided to go further. He ran through countless trees before stopping slowly and tripping over whatever he had punched. The energy and air were getting even heavier. It was like carrying another 2 Dekus on his back. The pressure had finally gotten to him, and he finally passed out. Subdipter. Deku woke up a few minutes later. The shadowy presence was gone, and he was finally able to stand up. What was that? He asked All Might, who was standing right in front of him. I couldn't see him close enough, said All Might. But he looks like Dabi. Zero comment. Chapter 50. The Curse of All for One. Oh and oh, Deku heard someone say. Seeing someone that has already passed usually means bad things to come. Deku's eyes jolted open. He was in the hospital. He felt awful. He saw Recovery Girl and All Might talking. Apparently he had passed out. He could barely move, and felt like he was going to die. There was a ceiling fan above him, whisking his hair around. He waited for All Might and Recover Girl to leave, and picked up a book he saw on the desk right next to him. An Idiot's Guide to Fixing Their Curse, he read. He read a bit, and then decided to check one more page before going to sleep. It was a dirty old page that stuck out when the book was shut. A big red eye was drawn on the page. He sat up a bit more and started reading. The words he saw flooded his mind, and he was extremely drawn to the page. Try as he might, this curse will happen on a Sunday night, he read. He was shocked. It was already Friday. He felt even worse now. He reluctantly kept reading, and did not like what he saw. All for One, what a mighty man, there's no way to break this curse, so there is no plan. Not a single soul in sight has survived this curse. Now get ready for suffering and prepare for the worst. Deku lay there shocked. What did this mean? Was his life going to end? Was it over for him no matter what he did? He decided not to think too hard about the poem that was written in the book. It was an old book anyway, so he might not have to even worry. He finally fell asleep. Yo, he heard someone say. A dark and lanky figure stood above him. It looked like Dabi. Zero comment. Chapter 51. Dabi's Note. Eyes red, Deku stood still, shocked at the sight of Dabi. I have a message, said Dabi loudly, waking a nearly asleep Deku. Oh hey Dabi, said Deku. Things haven't been going so well. Don't give up, boy, Dabi said. Deku could tell Dabi was trying to muster every bit of courage to spread to Deku. Maybe he's right, Deku thought. So what's your message? Said Deku. Dabi looked at Deku once more. Can you tell Todoroki I love him? Dabi said. The words pierced Deku's ears like a sharp harpoon, ravaging through him as he struggled to think about what Dabi had just said. Don't question me, said Dabi, as he cowed till Deku was about to open his mouth. Just do it. Once Deku had recovered, he started going to class again. He pulled Todoroki aside during break time and started talking. I saw Dabi, said Deku. Todoroki had a look of disbelief on his pale face. He told me to tell you that he loved you, said Deku. This caught Todoroki's attention. Deku explained what had happened, and Todoroki finally believed him. Todoroki was about to speak when a giant humanoid creature busted into the school. Feed me, the thing said. The thing had long yellow hair and was covered in bruise marks and blood stains, covered up by the jeans and biker jacket he was wearing. All the students evacuated and pulled on their hero costumes. 15% smash. Deku shouted, jumping towards the large creature. The building was already half destroyed by the time they had gotten back. Deku aimed his fist towards the monster's massive eye. He landed a rough hit right in the creature's eye. Sparks and explosions came out of his fist, and the monster's eyes turned a bright red. A large explosion blew Deku away and onto the ground. Bakugo, he said to Ida, who was standing right next to him. Bakugo was suddenly sent flying away, landing on a table, and then boosting himself back towards the monster. He landed right on the monster's forehead. Deku and a few other students jumped towards the monster, while the rest of the students used their long-range quirk on the monster. Some teachers came into the room and the students were evacuated, including Deku. Mirio, Nijire, and Tamaki, the big three, were now launching themselves towards the monster. Deku was suddenly dragged into a corner. A shadow was taking over his body, and he could barely feel his legs. He spun around, and finally, everything became clear. All for one. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine. Sorry I've been gone for a bit. I've had troubles in my personal life, but I'm back now. Enjoy. Like it? Add to library? Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. I tag this book. Come and support me with a thumbs up. Creation is hard. Cheer me up. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 52. Deathful Deku Dearest. I have you here now, Deku, said All for One. Deku shook on the spot. This was All for One's chance to kill him. Nobody would find out. Deku though. Deku tried to run, but the shadow consuming him pushed harder. Let me go, All for One. Deku shouted. All for One turned around to look at him, a disgusted look crossing his face. Please, just call me Al, said All for One. All right, Al, Deku started. What do you want with me? All for One walked towards Deku. The room was dark and cold, and the only light that was visible was a bright fireplace. I've waited years to end this endless loop of one for all's successors, said All for One. And finally, with you sitting here in front of me, I can do just that. Deku shivered. He looked around the room, hoping to find a way to escape. He thought of only one solution. He used his secondary quirk, Black WHP, to push All for One back, although he was barely pushed back at all. What a useless attempt, said All for One. 30% smash. Deku shouted. He brought his arm up and let out a massive energy wave, sending books and tables around the room. A few of the books hit All for One, and yet it seemed that he hadn't even flinched yet. Deku struggled and struggled, but all of it was for nothing. All for One put his hand on Deku's shoulder. My dear boy, it is with passion that I must say, you have improved in your abilities and your confidence. All for One said, looking Deku straight in the eye. But there is no hope that you can beat me. Deku reached out to attack All for One, but he put his fist down. Being almost 2.5 feet taller than Deku, it was pointless to even dodge Deku's attacks. Deku finally laid back, accepting his fate. This is for all my lost soldiers. All for One shouted, putting his fist up. Deku quickly thought of a plan. Just as Deku was about to be executed, he threw himself towards All for One. And this is for all might. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine. Sorry there's breaks between episodes, I've just got stuff going on, but I will be making more chapters. Share with your friends, and see if you can get the references in this chapter. Make sure to leave a like, because you guys really motivate me to do more, and I will be releasing a super long chapter 2, and also possibly starting the next arc. Stay tuned for that. Your gift is the motivation for my creation. Give me more motivation. Creation is hard, Cheer me up. I tag this book. Come and support me with a thumbs up. Like it? Add to library? Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 53. All for One versus Deku. Deku's fist collided with All for One's. Just give it up, boy, shouted All for One. Deku's arm slipped a little. It was struggling to keep up with All for One's force. His arm was basically shredding in front of him. This just might be the end, he thought. What would his classmates think if he died? They would be miserable. All Might, Mirio, Bakugo. Then, one person came to Deku's mind. His mother. No. Deku said. All for One looked at him, puzzled. If it means saving my family, then I won't be giving up anytime soon. Green lighting and black smoke starting blasting out of Deku's arm. His black WHP quirk had activated, pushing All for One back. Shockwaves were bouncing across the room, smashing and destroying every object they could find. Tears flowed out of Deku's eyes as he stared at his rippling arm. He couldn't even feel his limbs by now. Deku's mind crumbled at the thought of losing his friends and family. All for One let out a few beams of darkness to push Deku back. And then it was over. Deku was on the ground, coughing violently. This is the end, Deku thought. All for One walked closer to Deku, fist pulled back. Now it's time to die, said All for One softly. I always hated the saying, but if it's necessary then, plus ultra. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 54. Gone for good? All for One landed a heavy blow to Deku's stomach. All for One's fist went deeper and deeper into Deku's gut, making him hiccup and cough up blood every few seconds. You bastard! Deku yelled, his strained voice resembling that of a screeching bird. Deku pulled up the courage to swing his fist at Al's face, and with a swift blow, Al was stumbling back, his fist finally removed from Deku's stomach. I'll make you suffer like I did to Nana, said Al. Don't you talk about her like that. Deku shouted back. He launched towards All for One, preparing to kick him. He landed a quick blow to Al's side, and then punched him in the face, making him stumble and fall onto the ground. Big bright ball of green electricity were floating around Deku, lighting the room like a star in the night. Deku prepared one more punch for Al, looking at the spot where his eyes were supposed to be. With one large and heavy bow, All for One was now unconscious. Deku wrapped some bandages around his arms that he found on the ground, and left the room. He then realized he had no idea where he was. There were many pathways spreading out in different directions, resembling a giant maze. He went left a few times, then took a right, a left, and 2 rights. There was a door next to him now. When he opened the door, all that was there was a few books spread across the floor, and a torch lighting the room up. After stumbling around a few more pathways, he sat down on the ground. This is just pointless, he said to himself. He started cursing under his breath. He started to cry. I'm sorry, Mom, that I want make I dash. He was suddenly cut off. A massive door opened, leading to the outside world. Not expecting anything weird to happen, he ran up to the door, ready for the taste of freedom. But he soon felt a jab in his stomach once he was below the doorframe. There was a massive gaping hole in his stomach. He looked around before he blacked out, and saw no other than All for One. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 55. The End of an Adventure. Deku woke up. He was in a bright room that had at least 100 lamps on the walls. Big red drapes hung from the windows, and All for One stood in the middle of the room, motionless. Deku spoke, and even at that, All for One didn't move a muscle. It was as if he was a statue. Deku tried to stand, but only just realized he was tied to a chair. A massive saw was above him, begging to have a go at Deku's flesh. What am I here for? Deku said. All for One pulled a note out of his pocket. There's 2 conditions. All for One stated. Either mail this note to your school telling them you've become a villain, Deku cringed at the thought of sending the note, or enjoy being sliced in half by my saw. All for One then said. Deku was now sweating profusely. What if we just dash? Deku was stuttering. He looked at All for One, sweating even more as All for One glared at him. He couldn't even try to run at this time either. He suddenly stood up with the chair and the rope wrapped around him. He started running for the door, and then he walked through it, but spawned at the same place he was in before. "No point running, kid," said All for One in a menacing voice. Deku looked up at the saw, and then at the note in All for One's hand. "Choose wisely." Deku realized what he had to do. He walked up to One for All and grabbed the note from his hand. He ripped it into shreds. He looked up at All for One, expecting a worried look on his face, but instead, All for One was calm. He used his power to put all the pieces back together, and looked at Deku once again, a bit more angry this time. "Choose now," All for One said loudly. Tears filled Deku's red eyes. Was this really the right thing to do? Should he pick the note, or death? He looked at the saw, and then the note. He repeated this process for a while. He was tempted to use his black WHP quirk to hit All for One. He started to cry even more. "What's taking so long?" said All for One. Deku had nowhere else to go, and he knew All for One was more powerful than him, so fighting would be pointless. "Can I have a bit more time?" said Deku. "I could do this all day." All for One replied. Deku sat there, thinking of a way to escape. There was practically no way out. He would just have to face hell. "I pick death," said Deku firmly. All for One looked at him. He smiled, then pulled a lever that made the saw start to go down. Deku let out pools of tears and sniffled a million times, prepared to die at All for One saw. The saw came down to his hair, and then .it was all over. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine. This one is kinda dark, but try it, share it with friends, and rate 5 stars. Or just rate whatever, but I hope you like my book because I've been working for quite a while to push out new chapters. Your gift is the motivation for my creation. Give me more motivation. Creation is hard, cheer me up. I tag this book, come and support me with a thumbs up. Like it? Add to library? Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 56, The End of an Adventure Part 2. Deku opened his eyes. He looked around. He was seeing like a normal human, and he was still alive, so he must not have been sliced, at least. Deku turned around. Nana was standing in front of All for One with her hand on the saw. She had ripped it off the wall and pointed it at All for One. "You be," she said, the light making her skin gleam. "This is for One for All." She pulled her hand down, but instead of getting sliced to death, when the saw hit All for One, he just turned into purple smoke and cleared. Deku looked around the room again to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Nana turned around and grabbed his hand. "Come on, kid, we have to leave," she muttered. As soon as Deku touched her hand, his whole environment changed, and he was back in the place he was in before he was transported to All for One. Deku landed on the ground, noticing that the giant villain was still there, but he was starting to fall. The giant man hit the ground with a large thud, and Deku ran off to see where All Might was. As soon as he found All Might, he started explaining what had happened. "You clashed with All for One?" All Might said with a confused look stapled to his face. "It seems he has returned, and you are once again in danger and in need of more training." Deku looked up at All Might, joyful. Anything to get All for One off his mind was good enough for him. After everyone had gone back to classes, Deku told Uraraka and a few other people what had happened. He asked them not to tell anybody. "You went up against All for One and lost to?" Bakugo shouted. Deku tried not to turn red. "How am I supposed to beat him if I'm so young?" Deku replied. Bakugo kept a stern look the whole day. "I still can't believe it." Bakugo kept repeating to himself. "I should have gone up against that bastard." Deku opened his notebook, ready to continue lessons. It felt like only a few minutes had passed, and he was with All Might, training. Let's start by improving on your kicks. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine. This is the end of my longest arc, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. So let's get some hype for the next arc and the long chapter coming up soon. Maybe an even longer arc will be appearing. Your gift is the motivation for my creation. Give me more motivation. Creation is hard, cheer me up. I tag this book, come and support me with a thumbs up. Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 57. Having a Talk. Deku woke up at around 4 a.m. It was early, but Deku didn't care. What he cared about was preparing for All for One's return. Tell me more about what you saw, kid, said All Might. Deku sat down and started talking. Well, Nana came in and she saved my life. Deku said, making All Might spit out the coffee he was drinking, a look of surprise on his face. Wait, Nana Shimura? All Might said, unconvinced. Deku nodded silently. How could this be? All Might said to himself. Deku told him about the ultimatum, and how there was a whole maze, and he then explained why his stomach was bandaged up. A gaping hole in your stomach? All Might said. You're lucky that you're still alive, young Midoriya. Deku looked around. He felt like they were being watched. So, what did Nana say? All Might said. This is for the generations. Deku replied. All Might looked at him with piqued interest, as if he was watching a 5-star television show. I also almost got sawed in half. Deku said dully. All Might quickly turned away, sweating, nervous to talk about how Deku almost died. So that's when Nana came in? All Might said. Deku nodded again. All Might was so interested that he couldn't stop talking and asking questions, and Deku, being the nice one, answered all of them. Oh, sorry, kid. All Might said. It's already 6:30 a.m., and I gotta go for my run. All Might said as he started leaving. Deku started training. He wasn't going to let this summer go to waste, even if All Might wasn't there to guide him. He worked on his kicks first and then his punches. After he was done, it was already 7:49, and he was planning to go visit Mei Hatsum's house to get some new gear and some new gloves. Later, he visited Ida for tips on speed. Maybe it isn't even a fight in which you will challenge All for One. Ida said. Deku was confused. As in, maybe it's a duel, or some sort of challenge that does not require fighting. Deku then understood. I'll practice everything I know to beat him. Deku said. He gained confidence with every classmate and friend's house he had visited. Don't forget, he could show up at any time, even when you're hurt or least expecting it, said Uraraka when Deku went to her house for tips. You better not lose this time, you demon nerd. Bakugo said when Deku went to his house for tips. It was already 10 p.m. by the time he was done, and he decided to go home to get some rest. He was extremely tired by then. Perfect. Deku said to himself as he flopped onto his bed. Now I just gotta repeat this every day. Every single day. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine, ArtistQuarantine. Hope you enjoyed the previous arc, and if you did and you're enjoying this new arc, then leave a rating and show your friends my story. Your gift is the motivation for my creation. Give me more motivation. Creation is hard, cheer me up. I tag this book, come and support me with a thumbs up. Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 58. Friendly Rivalry. Deku was at Bakugo's house for more tips. That's it, Deku, he said. What he said next stunned Deku for the next few seconds as he tried to process it. You and me are gonna fight again, and you better win this time. Deku mustered all the courage he had and said, I'll definitely win this time. But he knew that no amount of training he took part in would help him beat Bakugo. Follow me, kid. Bakugo said. Ignoring Bakugo's statement, he walked with him outside and into a deserted area. Now fight me. Bakugo shouted, smoke flowing out of his hands. The place was empty, and only a few houses were scattered across the place, all of which were different colors, but had broken windows. Die! Bakugo shouted as he leaped towards Deku. Deku started regretting agreeing to fight Bakugo, but jumped out of Bakugo's explosion range as he was lost in thought. Bakugo boosted himself forward, and within seconds he was below Deku, waiting for him to land. Deku did the only thing he could do well. Smash! Deku shouted as green electricity flew around him and a big shockwave spread across the place as he flicked his finger. Bakugo was pushed back, and eventually stumbled onto the floor from the pressure of the shockwave. Deku knew this was his chance. He ran up to Bakugo and pulled his fist back. Bakugo already had black smoke fuming and rumbling in his hand. Don't think just 'cause you got All Might and you train every day that you can beat me. Bakugo yelled. Smash! Explode a pult. A gust of wind and pressure flew everywhere. Deku's hit landed on Bakugo's face, knocking him back and making him crash into one of the deserted houses, while the explosion and waves knocked Deku away, making him tumble and roll on the ground for a bit before eventually landing in front of the door for one of the deserted houses. Coughing, Deku stood back up, waiting for Bakugo's appearance. A pale arm suddenly shattered the window behind Deku, trying to grab him. Bakugo pulled Deku into the house by breaking the door, and then used a mighty explosion to blow the house up and make Deku and him fly away. Deku was fast enough to use a smash when Bakugo pulled the explosion, thus making them both fall back once again. Deku pulled his fist back as he saw Bakugo soaring towards him like a bullet. Within seconds, Deku was in the air and Bakugo was on the ground. Deku flew through the air, and then cushioned his fall with his shoes. Bakugo got back up and wiped blood off of his face. Glass and wood was laid out across the floor, blood staining them and turning them into a deep and dark red. Deku jumped on the wall of one of the houses and leaped off. He soared towards Bakugo with his fist back. The final shot, they both shouted. Deku felt the power of one for all rush through him. Explode a smash. Boom. The wind was moving like crazy. Glass and more wood flew every which direction, some stabbing Deku and Bakugo. And then only one remained. Dark tendrils coming out of Deku's back, he said, I won this time. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 59. The Big News. Deku sank deep into his chair. He was sitting in Principal Nizu's office, twiddling his thumbs. We need to talk, Midoriya, said Nizu. Deku felt a strong urge to hit him. All Might here says you were talking about some vision thingy you saw. Deku turned to All Might and said, yes, that is true. Deku turned pale at the thought of his vision. Principal Nizu had a resting look in his eye. Care to explain? He said. Deku jumped at what he said, nodded, and started talking. I had a vision that I was killing someone. Deku started. There was blood gushing everywhere, and the man wasn't okay at all. He was crying, but speaking in another language. I didn't know what to do at all. I wanted to help, but I was the one attacking him. I had a massive arm that was stretched out towards him, with wires and coils around it. All Might jumped when he heard Deku. Spikes, flames, prickly thingies, horns, rocky bits, you name it, that was what was on my arm. Deku said. It felt as though the arm was another me, weighing myself down. The silence that came hit Deku, and then he finally realized what was happening here. Was that all for one? Deku said. All Might nodded silently. Did this mean that Deku was part of All for One? Was he meant to be just like All for One? Maybe he was related to him. Could have even been infected, really. Deku straightened his back and stood up. What does this mean then? Deku said. You might want to leave for a bit, said All Might. Deku left the room, fuming. Fine, don't tell me anything then, he thought. He could hear them talking back and forth as he sat on a chair next to a large pillar in the school hallway. He couldn't be returning already, could he? Was it even possible? Deku thought about it for a minute, panning out for a while and not listening to All Might and Nizu talk. Deku went to the bathroom, washed his face up and went back. By the time he was done, Principal Nizu was waiting outside the door. Hello there, Midoriya, he said. Quickly, come on in now. Deku followed him inside the room. He was ready for the worst news ever. It won't be too comfortable with an empty stomach. All Might said, passing him a biscuit and milk. Deku was just about to finish his drink when the news hit him. He dropped his mug and it shattered on the floor. Everything just went dark. He couldn't believe what he had heard. He just couldn't think. He left the room sweating. No way, right? He kept thinking to himself. It can't be possible. All for One's younger self. Zero comment. Chapter 60. A Fake Friend. Deku sat still on the floor. He was at Uraraka's house with Bakugo, Ida, Kirishima, and a few others like Mina, Jiru, and Momo. He told them all about it, and they looked at him with crazy expressions. Juvenile depression, is it? Momo said, an eerie look in her eyes. No worries then. Deku couldn't even listen to her talk without wanting to crawl into the deepest hole and never return. His insides felt like jelly. The way Momo spoke made Deku cringe as if she was scraping her nails on a chalkboard or being some pest to him. "Is there something that you need to tell me, Momo?" Deku said. Momo was now cringing too, and she was sweating profusely. Deku's temper was rising. "No, of course not," Momo said in a weak voice, as though trying to hide something. "I would never." Deku looked at her with a dissatisfied look in his eye. Momo was now sweating even harder. Deku realized what this meant. "You knew, didn't you?" Deku said. "And now you think it's okay to just avoid me because it might be true." Momo looked around. Momo got up and ran out of the room. "Alright, so how are we going to fix this, Deku?" Uraraka said. "Simple," Deku said. "I'm dropping out of UA and going home so I don't endanger me or my friends." Deku left the room, slamming the door behind him. Tears filled Deku's eyes. It was tough, but this was what he had to do, no doubt. When he got home, he ran straight up to his room and slammed the door shut. "Yeah, it's fine," Deku said to himself. "I'll just stay here for eternity." Deku wiped his tears away and sat up. "No, there's no need to be sad now," Deku said to himself. "This is how it all went wrong in the first place." Deku stood up, feeling better. "I won't give up now," he said to himself. "If All for One is going to return, I have to practice to make sure I am ready for it." He put on a big smile and strode out of his room happily. He said goodbye to his mother and then walked out the door. Although he felt better, there was no doubt that the future would be difficult. Deku then saw a massive shadow in the air. The pressure the shadow was giving off was immense. The air was cool and tense, making Deku shiver every second he felt it. His stomach turned in knots. The dark figure was getting closer and closer. Deku ran and ran, but no matter how hard he tried, the dark presence followed him. The air pressure was even stronger now. He collapsed, ready to admit defeat. If this was going to be a fight, he needed to see his opponent. He turned around, and with a shocked look in his eyes, he gasped and coughed and tried a desperate attempt at running. The figure was none other than All for One. Creator's thoughts. ArtistQuarantine, ArtistQuarantine. Yes, let's go. Another chapter pushed out, guys. I really hope you enjoy the series. Make sure to rate how you'd like. Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. Like it? Add to library? I tag this book. Come and support me with a thumbs up. Creation is hard, cheer me up. Your gift is the motivation for my creation. Give me more motivation. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 61. Runnin' and Runnin'. Deku glanced up at All for One. "How are you back again?" said Deku. "Just tenacious, aren't I?" replied All for One. "An intellectual idea, if I do say so myself." Deku jumped into the air, holding back the urge to quit. Deku then got punched by All for One, who had sent a rising fist towards him, thumping Deku down to the ground and making him descend for ages. Deku started sweltering. Not a single idea came to his unusually blank head. His efforts were ineffective. "It's time to die," said All for One. The sun was being even more disturbing than All for One, blazing Deku's skin to a boil. "Should have taken sunscreen, boy," said All for One, jumping through abandoned alleyways to catch up to Deku. Deku finally collapsed onto the ground, giving up and accepting his downfall to the sun and All for One. Deku propelled himself back a few more times in a hopeless attempt to survive, but his actions were futile. The sun ridiculed him. Deku stood up and started to run, but tripped, giving All for One the chance to catch him by the foot. All for One swung Deku around and then threw him at a few buildings. After crashing around and tumbling for a while, Deku was down near the ocean. Tears were forming in Deku's eyes, and he was gasping while clutching his chest. "You should have just given up, boy," All for One said, marching up to Deku casually. It was as if he didn't even care. "You don't even have decency," Deku said in a last-ditch attempt. All for One stumbled back a bit. "Attacking someone while they're down is no way of showing your strength," Deku shouted. All for One stood, motionless. Deku took this as a sign to stand up. As soon as he got into position, he started sprinting. Nobody's going to believe this, Deku said to himself, remembering what happened with Momo. He felt a quick ache in his heart and kept moving. Bouncing from wall one to another, Deku was able to make it onto school grounds, where All for One could not pass due to the new alarm system. I finally won, Deku muttered, watching All for One fade away. He fell onto the floor, extremely tired. It's finally over now. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 62, Gaining Trust. So you guys believe me, right? Dek asked the same classmates as he had asked yesterday. They were once again in a meeting, but this time at Bakugo's house, and a few others were here. Nice of you to make some friends, Bakugo's mom said. Bakugo put on a furious look, making everyone in the room giggle and snicker. Course we do, Denki said. You're amazing. Deku flushed. We do too, a few others said. Good, because we'll need training if All for O-. Deku saw the immediate trembling in the room. If he returns, we'll need training to make sure he doesn't get to us, Deku said. Almost everyone in the room put on an enthusiastic face. A few gulped, and a few toppled back a bit. Luckily, Kirishima found us a perfectly private place to train our skills in, Deku said happily. Everyone in the room was now happy. Kirishima stood up. Well, let's go then, what are we waiting for? Kirishima shouted hysterically. Kirishima led the classmates to a weird mine. Where are we? Todoroki said. The Havarti dungeons, Kirishima said, rushing them all in. Some were reluctant to go but eventually followed Kirishima. They were now in a large cave. Massive, Uraraka said. Now, all of us shall practice our moves in here on these dummies that Bakugo helped me set up. Bakugo eyed Deku dangerously. Each of us should pair up so that we get things done quicker, Deku said. He looked around. Everyone was pairing up now. Deku was stuck with Denki. Hi, Denki, Deku said. Let's start. Denki turned on his electricity, and it flowed around him in massive waves. Wow, you've already improved over this summer, Deku said, eyeing Denki. The massive waves of electricity got bigger and bigger, and eventually pushed Deku back, making him fall onto the ground. Sure have, Denki said quickly. Deku turned on One for All and electricity flowed out of him too, also in massive waves. Deku then spoke to Denki again. Hit me with all you've got. Denki rushed towards Deku. Lighting surrounded Deku and closed him in, shocking him for what seemed like years. Deku finally jumped out of the lightning and rolled onto the ground. That was my 1,000,000 watt thundershock, Denki shouted. Deku stood up. His nose was bleeding and he was now sweating. Fight me like a real man. Comment. Zero comment. Chapter 63, Deku vs. Denki. Deku looked around. Everyone around was progressing and getting better. Fight me as a real man would, Denki said again. Deku stumbled back a bit, but then stepped forward. Smash! Deku shouted as he pulled his fist back. He punched Denki right in the stomach but was thrown back a bit because Denki had put on a lightning blanket. Deku's fist ached and soon turned a light yellow color. Denki smiled, getting back up. Deku knew that his right hand was basically out of commission. Deku ran towards Denki with his left fist pulled back, hoping not to strike Denki's lightning blanket. Great for defense, innit? Denki said confidently. Learned it just a few weeks back. Deku could not resist. He smiled and started running faster and faster. He yelled smash again and with a quick blink he was on the ground again, sweating. Denki was still up, but his legs were weak and he was about to fall over. Clever to hit you in the knees, wasn't it? Deku said, getting up. The most unexpected spot. At least my blanket held out a little, Denki responded. Otherwise I would be dead. Denki ran towards Deku this time. Deku spun around and started traveling all over the place, trying his best to confuse Denki. He pretended over and over that he was going to attack Denki, and Denki always put up his blanket to cover. Eventually, Denki had pushed himself too far and fell to the floor. You need to work on making that move last longer as well as adding some new moves to your deck, Deku said, gazing down at Denki with a sparkle in his eyes. And you also need to learn when the enemy is going to attack and when they're tricking you. Alright everyone, we're done for today. Deku shouted across the cave, picking Denki up off the ground. Everyone rounded up and left the cave. Deku! Denki yelled, running to Deku quickly. You need to teach me how to do cool moves like that later, okay? Denki said happily. Deku nodded and Denki used his bike to get home. Deku gazed at him for a few seconds before turning around and following the 2 or 3 people that were still here. Ida, Tokoyami, and Kirishima. The 4 of them looked around at each other. Make sure to show me some real manly moves next time, Deku. Kirishima said with a blazing fire in his eyes. Sure will. Deku said as he nodded. I would like to see some more of those tricks next time, Todoroki said to Deku with a bit of excitement. I sure had fun today. Have a good one. Todoroki then said. Now it was only Deku and Ida. Although I do not approve of this and think that school won't be great to drag into this. Ida said with a blanket of determination covering him. It is a helpful topic and your moves really help us all learn. Ida said. He suddenly flushed and ran home after seeing Deku's wide smile. Deku got home and flopped onto the couch, checking his phone. There was a message from All Might. Meet me at the school grounds entrance, kid. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 64, Gaining Trust. Point 2. All for One is returning in November. All Might said in a rush. Deku gaped at him. Yes, it's really true. All Might had a panicked expression on his face. Deku kicked a rock that was nearby and started talking, sweat pouring down from him. All Might grabbed Deku by the arm and dragged him to the cave he took his classmates into to train earlier. This is where you were with your classmates, isn't it? All Might said blankly. Deku flushed and nodded silently. If you're going to stop All for One, we need everyone in the city. All Might said. Nobody believes me though. Deku said angrily. Even my fellow classmate couldn't believe me. Deku remembered the way Momo walked out of the room. He was fuming now. No, what I mean is a public newspaper about it, and maybe even on social media. All Might said quickly. Deku stared at him. All Might was usually the type to do safe stuff, but this was more reckless than usual. Deku thought about it, and finally came out with okay. But those news creeps are all over me and just want to spread lies. Deku shouted. All Might smiled at him. Not with me here they won't. Listen, I've called a trustworthy interviewer to come and learn your story so that Gran Torino can tell one of the publishers of the Mavericks magazine to put your story in. Deku looked at him as if he was crazy. And I also made posts on social media, with loads of followers, I'm sure they'll believe you. All Might said enthusiastically. Deku and All Might talked for a bit, and Deku eventually went home. He ate dinner and then went straight to bed. Tomorrow will be a good day, he said to himself. Deku put on a wide smile and went to bed. The next day, he woke up early so that he could make it to another All for One training meeting. Every one of his classmates stared at him as they made their way to the cave. Deku finally turned around. What? He said angrily. Denki was pointing behind Deku. In the back of the line was Momo. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 65. Gaining Trust. Point 3. What are you doing back here? Deku said, fuming. You didn't believe me earlier. Momo stumbled back a bit, but then walked towards him. Stupid. Wasn't it? Momo said. She looked regretful. But I saw some things, guys. It's not good and we need to go now. Down to Favaronia Street at the League of Villains headquarters. She said, rushing the words out of her mouth as if trying to get them out purposely and as quickly as possible. How do we know this will work? You know, whatever you're planning. Zero said. Momo shot a dirty look at him. We'll have to try Zero. It's trouble with Dash. Deku shushed Momo. Not after you betrayed me last time, Deku said, a determined look in his eye. He and the rest of the group started to walk away. All Might is in danger. Momo shouted across the street. The whole group of them, including Momo, were now running towards the League of Villains base. They were now facing the door, some people still behind. Deku decided to jump in through the side window, Todoroki jumped from the other side window, and the rest of the class charged into the room. There was no sight of All Might, nor the League of Villains. Upstairs. Deku said as he heard voices from another room up the stairs. Some people stayed downstairs, and some charged into the room. The League of Villains was there, but no All Might. Damn it, get them! Shigaraki shouted. Everyone in the room was now brawling. Deku took on a few villains and then jumped onto the roof. He looked down at all the villains. The air was cold. Someone was missing. A dark presence spread across the room. The air was pressing Deku down, and he felt his legs buckle. He looked up. Nothing. Everything was all black. Then he felt 4 cold fingers wrap around his neck. Sorry Deku. But your time is up. Comment. 0 comment. Chapter 66, All for 2. Deku winced, feeling 4 cold fingers wrap around his neck. He quickly punched Shigaraki in the face, making his eyeball swell up like a balloon. The classmates were still fighting. Deku looked around. There was another staircase, leading straight to the roof. Deku got pinned down to the floor by Dabi and then kicked him away. Only a few of us will make it, Ida said. Deku turned around. He was getting chased around by multiple villains. I have to stay and protect them, he thought. It's all up to you, Todoroki. Deku shouted. And take Tokoyami with you. Bakugo sprung up. I'm coming too, you nerds. He shouted. Bakugo suddenly got blasted away in a big explosion. He had to grip a table to stand up, and even when he caught his balance, he was still tripping. Tokoyami and Todoroki quickly ran up the stairs, slamming the door behind them. The air was cold and cruel. They looked around and saw nothing. The door suddenly locked itself. Tokoyami looked in front of him with a murderous look. All for One was standing right in front of their eyes. Todoroki quickly pulled a few moves out, landing All for One in a pile of ice and rubble and allowing Todoroki to burn him. Even after all the moves they used, All for One came out with a few scratches each after it all. Ice range! Todoroki shouted, putting up a monstrous barrier of ice. All for One got stuck in the ice and launched away with it. Even then, he teleported back to the place he was in. It was a whole war right now with everything happening. Todoroki looked out the window. He saw Hawks coming to see what the commotion was about. They set a trap by the door. Todoroki thought to himself. He looked at Tokoyami. I need to go save Hawks, he said, while Tokoyami nodded at him. Todoroki rushed downstairs. Everything happened in a second. Hawks walked in, and Hawks was now on the floor. Everyone turned for a few seconds, and a few people come to his aid, but the fighting continued after a bit. Todoroki watched as Denki flew through the air with big scratches and a swollen eye. Denki fell onto the ground. Now Koda flew out of the crowd and onto the ground, also injured. Then he saw Uraraka fly out, and she landed right next to Koda. Then a few more people came flying out. Like watching dandelion petals blow away from the strong winds, he watched as his classmates each got struck out one by one. Ida, Shiro, Momo, Aoyama, Hagakure, and Jiro all flew out of the crowd, badly wounded. The worst of the bunch was Mina. She had a bloody eye and a few broken bones, along with a sprained ankle, and to top it off, bruises covered her entire body and her hair was ruffled beyond the point of fixing. Deku didn't know what to do at this point. Meanwhile, Tokoyami was battling All for One. What are you even here for? Tokoyami said, breathing, and still in shock from seeing All for One. It's a simple concept. All for One said. A twisted smile was stapled to his face. He walked over to Tokoyami, towering over him. I want the child. All for One said, laughing roughly. Tokoyami took a while to realize what he meant. He looked up and fell to his knees. He wanted Eri. 0 comment. Chapter 67, Tokoyami's Mistake. Tokoyami felt goosebumps on his arm. Earlier that day, he had met with Eri and told her to go to Aizawa's place, but he then realized Aizawa was on vacation and left her there. No, Tokoyami said, sweat still dripping from his face. No, I won't be doing that. All for One had a puzzled look on his face. You know, this isn't really me. All for One said. But I will be returning, and it's only a matter of time. Tell your classmates, Tokoyami. November 23rd, at Balia Palace. It might be tough to say, but many will die in this battle. All for One said, grinning at the sigh of Tokoyami's worried expression. Tokoyami stumbled back a bit. I'll tell them, Tokoyami said, stuttering. He turned and put his hand on the door, and then walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him in a fit of rage. The battle downstairs had calmed down, and now only silence filled the room. Most of the students had actually won, while only a few were injured. They got away, Uraraka said. Tokoyami turned to them, sweating. All for One's coming back on November 23rd, and at Balia Palace. Tokoyami shouted, everyone's eyes fixed on him. He sat down. There was a loud screech outside. I'll get it, Sato said, beaming. He went outside holding a brownie. Next, there were a few fighting noises, but everyone was relaxed and calm. Deku suddenly heard no more noises, but Sato wasn't coming back in. Deku went to investigate. I'll check on him, Deku said as he was facing the door. He pulled it open and gasped with all the strength he had. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He went back inside. What did you see? Is he coming? Koda said. Deku tried to pull a grin, but nothing could make him grin or even faintly smile. It's over, Deku thought. He opened his mouth. Tears poured out of his eyes. Rikido Sato is dead. Zero comment. Chapter 68, August. Deku took the news as hard as everyone else. It was now 2 months after he had heard of the death of Sato. How did it happen? He thought. Was he going to think like this all summer? He felt a horrible pain in his stomach. If he had just gone out with Sato, he could have protected him from whatever danger was there. It's almost time. All Might kept telling him, trying to cheer him up and get him to focus. The training group and everything was going great, but sometimes a few meetings were cancelled just cause of him. It's all my fault, Deku thought while resting in his bed. He didn't want to start talking again, but he eventually sat up and started talking to his wall in an effortless attempt to get it to understand him. I'm the strongest there anyways, Deku shouted, cringing at what just came out of his mouth. No doubt I could have saved his life. This is so dumb. It was all my fault. Deku gradually turned his talking into shouting and acted as if his wall could hear him. Shivering and sweating, Deku finally laid back down. I'll just go to sleep, Deku said to himself. It's gonna be a long day tomorrow, Deku mumbled. Deku closed his eyes and dreamt about everything that happened. The next day Deku woke up bright and early to get to the junkyard that he would be practicing his moves at. Deku was still quaking at the sight, remembering how close the day was as he combed his tangly hair. Yeah, Deku said as All Might started rambling on about how close Deku was to fighting All for One. All Might, Deku said blankly. When Sato died, nobody knew how it happened. And I know this is true, but do you think that it could have been All for 1 inch? Deku finished. Black hole, All Might said. Deku suddenly woke up. He was still in his bed, sweating. It was now 4 in the morning, and he started to wonder whether he was in a dream again. A black hole. But that means that he's still alive.